got second chair today.
No, yep, exactly.
Right.
I think Tim's
I got the wrong
Tim's
place.
the only one that's not here today. Sorry, I got so much distance. It's just the cord over here.
You want me to slide down? Should I?
That is all up to everybody.
Okay. I'll go ahead and call to order. I'm going to say the September 2025 Victorian Village hearing. Our next business meeting will be Wednesday, September 24th at 12 noon. And that's going to be 111 North Front Street, second floor. Right now, currently it's room 205. Our next hearing date will be October 8th, 2025. And that'll be 4 p.m. and that's 111 North Front Street.
That'll actually be here.
Oh.
My apologies.
No, it's no worries.
That'll be 141 North Front Street.
Same location here
Yes.
because of the renovations that are ongoing. So it'd be in the same location for that's the October 8th hearing date. Go ahead and swear in staff. Go ahead and state your name.
Kimberly Bernard Sheehy.
Do you agree to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, Kimberly. Introduction of commissioners present. Pete, if you could start us off.
Schuler. Kevin Parzak. Reed Sprite.
Sean Conyers. All right, and then Kimberly, anything overview of hearing format?
I'll just go over it real quick
Go for it.
because I think we've got some newer folks who are starting this off.
Okay.
So how the hearing format works is city staff shall present the application. The applicant and owners will then be sworn in and asked to present any additional materials if needed. If there are any registered speakers, they will then be sworn in after that and provided 3 minutes to speak each. And then commissioners will discuss the case and ask questions if needed.
Perfect. Thank you, Kimberly. No, I'm presuming no public forum today.
No, not today.
Okay. Approval of staff approvals. Is there a motion, team?
Motion to approve staff approvals.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so Kimberly, you wanna read through?
All right, if you want to follow along, that starts on page 8 of the agenda with 198 Wilbert Avenue, 369 West Hubbard Avenue, 295 West First Avenue, 326 Wilbur Avenue, 231 West Hubbard Avenue, 308 West Hubbard Avenue, 216 West Hubbard Avenue, 114 West First Avenue, 766 Neal Avenue, 114 West First Avenue, and 961 Highland Street.
Awesome. Okay. Sessions, perfect. Is there a motion for approval of the minutes from the August 13th hearing?
Motion to approve the minutes from the August.
Is there a second?
Second.
Perfect. Any discussion needed? Okay, the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? One pass. I'll turn it over to you, Kimberly, for the rest.
All right, we'll start our applications off with number 1, which is 308 West Hubbard Avenue. If the applicants are here and would like to come sit down while I'm reading, this application is to remove and replace the existing attic exhaust fan with a new solar exhaust fan. The commissioners at the business meeting requested an aerial view of the house with the location of the attic vent notated. The applicant has submitted the aerial photo and the new packet was uploaded. HBO staff is supportive of solar vents, but unable to staff approve them. There are 2 of these vents on the agenda. The commission should discuss if both configurations are appropriate or if they have preferences on how such items are executed based on code guidelines. The commission should also discuss if such items can be staff approved in the future or if additional review is needed. Staff recommends approval of the application with any and all clarifications submitted to staff prior to the issuance of a certificate. Basis for staff recommendation is City Code 3116.11, the standards for alteration, as well as the Victorian Village guidelines on roofs.
Thank you, Kimberly. Hello, sir. How are you?
Hello.
That's good. Can you state your name? Get you sworn in?
Brian Lee.
Perfect. Do you agree to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, sir. Do you have anything to add for your application?
No, other than the reason why this is being replaced is because squirrels got through there and chewed up the electricity inside. So I'm looking for an easier option. There's not a lot of room on the 3rd floor because it's a finished 3rd floor. So getting the wiring up there would be a lot more difficult than just going with simple solar option.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Perfect. All right, team. Comments, thoughts? I think that since we have two on the agenda, so just making sure either, as part of the dialogue, being able to just offer some understanding of the configuration. Maybe thinking about profiles, thinking about that, and then understanding if maybe staff can maybe look at that later on from an approval perspective without coming to the commission.
Yeah, I'll jump in.
Go ahead.
I don't have a problem with either of the configurations. I mean, as long as these are, basically no bigger than what the vent itself would have been otherwise. I'm good with it, and I'm good with them for staff approval going forward.
I don't have too much of a problem either. The other one seems to be lower profile. The one for, looks like 338 West First. It looks just like a vent with just the solar on top of it.
But it's about half the power.
Oh, gotcha. 25 watt, gotcha. Hold on, let me see. Yeah, I'm with you. Understood.
I would also say this location is on the rear of a, historic building, but it's on the rear, it's not street facing.
Yep.
Its roof is important. The roof exhaust fan is probably not a distinctive stylistic feature of the house. Doesn't seem like it would be altering the character of the home.
I mean, I would say it would be subject to the same rules that any of those types of vents are, because typically you would say that it would have to be along the ridge, right, Kimberly, for approval. So to the extent you would allow any type of the hood type of vent, that you would be allowed to do it as a solar versus a hardwired. But if it's a whole new roof, you'd end up having to do the ridge vent.
The ridge vent. Okay, that's awesome. That helps. Kimberly, do you feel like, I know that this one is easy, they're both easy, but do you feel like you have enough guidance from a standpoint of not necessarily bringing these back, or when you bring them back?
Possibly,
Okay.
we'll see what ends up,
Mhm.
if there's additional ones
Yeah.
proposed, if there's different configurations.
Or
And if we
very,
can,
really large.
yeah, and if we can get a little more specific with maybe dimensions or some of the
Okay, so we'll-
specs
we'll
too,
get-
so.
We'll
Yeah,
pick that
just say
up.
no bigger than whatever was there that it's replacing is a good guideline. But okay.
I might even say similar to, it might be tough for applicants to measure their existing
For sure.
fan. And, there might be features that are slightly larger, but still appropriate. And I would think that would be the case for small devices like this.
Feel comfortable now? That helpful?
More comfortable, yes.
Okay, understandable. Just want to make sure. Okay, I don't have any opposing, kind of comments. I think I'm all in alignment with the team. So is there a motion, team, at all?
Sure. Motion on application COA 2500826 308 West Hubbard Avenue to approve the application as submitted.
Is there a second?
I'll say.
All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed. Thank you, sir,
Thank
for a
you for
little
coming
bit
in.
longer. Since we have two, we're just trying to work through it, so really appreciate it. So thank you.
All right, and I'll note the discussion points of what makes them appropriate as reasons for approval
Yes, ma'am.
as well, but we'll move on to number 2, which is 338 West First Avenue. This application is to remove and replace the existing asphalt shingle roof with the GA ash shingles in English gray. The ridge roll and valley metal would be either Tinner's red or gray, and replace the attic exhaust fan with new solar exhaust fan. Commissioners at the business meeting requested an aerial view of the house with the location of the attic vent notated. And like the last one, HPO staff is supportive of the solar vent, but unable to staff approve them. There's 2 of the events on the agenda. Commissioners should discuss if those configurations are appropriate, or if there's preferences based on code guidelines. That commission should also discuss if such items can be staff approved in the future, or if an additional review is required. Staff recommends approval of the application with any and all clarification submitted to staff prior to issuance of certificate. Basis for staff recommendation is City Code 311611, these standards for alteration, as well as the Victorian Village guidelines regarding roofs. And I forgot to note in the last staff report, the National Park Service's guidance on solar panels on historic properties bulletin.
Makes sense. Do we have an applicant for number 2?
We approve.
I was gonna say, do we have discussion? Do we have questions, or do we feel comfortable moving ahead with an as submitted sort of?
I think we're
It
good.
seems like we can move ahead, just given the dialogue on the last one.
Yeah, I was gonna say, this is a staff recommended application, so staff's okay with moving ahead if we need to.
Yeah, and if you want something for the minutes, one comment I would have on this, building in particular and roof profile is that it's a fairly shallow hip roof. With, I don't know if there's pictures really submitted from this, but just a quick Google Street View makes it very difficult to imagine you'd be able to see this element ever, from the right of way.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's actually installed there. In the picture.
Any further thoughts or comments, team?
I don't know if it's replaced by parents.
Yeah, sure. I think we're good.
Is there a motion?
Yeah, we'll do one. All right, motion to approve COA 2500819 338 West First Avenue as submitted.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed.
All right, who had a second on that?
That was,
Okay, that's what I thought, but you two are sitting kind of
Kind of
close,
same.
so like when I'm not looking, it was like, okay, am I hearing things or am I hearing correctly?
Awesome.
All right, application number 3 is 34 West Poplar Avenue. This application is to remove the existing French doors and install a 3-panel Pella lifestyle door. Exterior color would be the hardwood green. This was continued last month due to absence of an applicant, but commissioners at the business meeting requested that the location of the unit be marked on the photo as they weren't able to determine which floor from the submitted photos. A straight-on photo of the existing door was also needed. And since the design differs from those already approved, the commission would like to see the HOA's approval of the design. They also suggested submitting an alternative design similar to the existing 2-door design. Staff recommends continuation of the application with the materials requested at the business meeting to be submitted for further consideration. Basis for staff recommendation are the Victorian Village guidelines regarding windows and doors, as well as City Code 3116.12, these standards for new construction.
Awesome, thank you. Can you state your name and get you sworn in, sir?
Isaiah Aaron's.
Do you agree to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. Any thoughts related to the application based upon the comments that were provided by staff?
A few, I am new to this.
No worries.
So will the list of things she said be submitted back? Should I write those down now?
No, I think just from Kimberly's perspective, I think this conversation, she will probably share those notes.
Okay, okay.
Kimberly, you want?
I will do that through the Citizens Access Portal or email address on file.
Perfect.
Awesome.
I believe that would be my project coordinator. I would follow those. Yeah, we have the same color on the outside. We've used that in the building before. I think that's pretty much it. Besides doing a triple panel, the sizing for the sliding door, I believe we're not able to do that in a double door. And that is pretty much everything I have.
Is there anything that would be challenging as it relates to being able to put the same configuration back in?
So the configuration right now, when we have to take out the side lights, because that's all connected, so there's the 2 side lights on the side and then the hinge doors in the middle. We would need some additional sizing, and so that's why we can't do a triple hinge door, because it would require a 3rd one. And so that's why we're doing the 2 fixed with the sliding, but
I know, I'm trying to pull out the information that you would need as it relates to your staffing report. Do you feel like that's enough or
Well,
just trying to?
I mean, from the staff report, that was all of what the commissioners had requested at the
That's
business meeting, so.
Yeah. Okay,
So, and just to clarify, a sliding door to one side and a fixed panel, so it's only a 2-panel door is not feasible for this size of opening in the product line,
so you're saying do like a double?
a 2-panel slider.
I don't think so. I think with the sizing, when I was originally at the residence and measured it, I think we had to add another panel because of the sizing. He wanted less glass or less bars in between originally, so I had more glass for more natural.
Okay.
but the sizing, I believe, did not permit.
But the rest of the building has all French doors, right?
I believe so. I believe there are some neighbors that may have switched to sliding doors, but do not have pictures of them.
Okay, yeah, I mean, the concern that I have is that this would be the only unit with 3 panels. Then, and so there would be inconsistency across the units. So that's part of the reason we're asking. We want to make sure that the HOA would be signs off on that, because I'm not sure that they would. And I'm not sure that we would either. So, sliders is one thing, but switching that from 2 to 3 is a whole different thing. So, so I think that's going to be a concern. So,
What floor are they on?
The 5th floor.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's another level because it's a walkout on the other side of the building.
Gotcha.
oh, okay.
Gotcha. So probably not very visible.
Well, that matters. Yeah, if it's not visible, then that
It's not visible, correct?
I will note the code and guidelines don't say anything about visible or
Fair.
not visible, so just so we don't go down rabbit holes or get yourselves in trouble.
Thank you.
Kimberly.
I didn't-
As always.
Keeping us honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why we asked about having it marked about where is this on the building, so that, I guess even if it's not visible, letting us know where that is. So that we can understand where this fits in and all of that.
I'll go back to my number of sliding panels question. Could you do side lights adjacent to, sliding panels or fixed and sliding panels? So it's more consistent with the remaining doors on the building.
On that design, I'm not sure. I would have to put it in our PQM system. When we build them out. I have never done that before. We've only done the entry systems or French doors before.
Just thinking of a door configuration that might be more consistent with the rest of the building and more easily deemed appropriate.
So for instance, if the gentleman took inventory of, I guess, what's been replaced maybe with their products and then try to understand challenges or how this opening aligns, that could be helpful for that next round. And
Yeah.
I think that what we're trying to do is just try to stay consistent and then at the same time comply with the HOA. So just some kind of understanding that the HOA has been communicated to with what is being proposed
Okay.
will be helpful for that next round.
So to get it approved from HOA.
Yeah.
Then what would be?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, I think the key here is, when in doubt, bring us something that is as close to what's there as possible. Right, so the side lights and 2 panels, with, whether it's a slider or French doors that have relatively similar, massing. And if it's gonna be something different, have something that justifies that based on it being used elsewhere in the building. And having the HOA supporting the use of that, elsewhere in the building.
And Kimberly, is there anything else that you would need for your file to try to help us move forward if we were to continue this?
I don't believe so. I think what you're mentioning now, as well as what the commission had previously touched upon,
Awesome.
would help everybody.
Okay. So we're going to go ahead and continue the application today, and then hopefully that information can be shared with Kimberly and we'll get you back on the agenda.
Sounds great. And that's done through the online
Yeah,
portal?
the Citizens Access Portal.
Okay.
What will happen is it'll take me about 3 to 5 business days to type up the minutes and typically get them out. But if it's a heavier agenda, it can take a little bit longer to get those out. You will have a week from today to submit those materials that the commission has noted and asked about back into the portal, and then email me to let me know, because our portal system doesn't let me know when materials are uploaded, unfortunately. So this is the long way of working around it. But I will typically get that letter into the portal, which it will email the applicant, whoever's emails on file with that application.
Got it. So I have a week from today
Yes,
to submit HOA approval and then maybe something similar in the building as well.
yes.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. All right, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion. Motion to, well, for COA 2500-627-34 West Poplar Avenue, to continue the application to allow for further documentation to be submitted.
Awesome. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Reed. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Let's continue. Thank you, sir. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, application number 4 is 710 Mill Avenue. This application is to remove the existing slate roof and replace with asphalt shingles. Shingles would either be the certain carriage house shingles in stone gray or GAF slate line shingles in English gray. And replaced any damaged wood on the box gutter to match existing and repaint the replacement wood, the Benjamin Moore Classic cream, to match the existing color. The slate has been maintained over the years as evident by the replacement slates on the roof. HBO staff checked the file and we don't have any approvals for the repair work. Staff does support the repair work to the box gutters, and should the commission wish to further examine the slate roof, then staff recommends splitting the application to at least allow the repair work to be completed. Staff recommends approval of the application with any and all clarifications submitted to staff prior to issuance of the certificate. And basis of staff recommendation is City Code 3116.11, new standards for alteration, as well as the amendments to the City of Columbus Architectural Review Commission guidelines and the Victorian Village guidelines regarding roofs.
All right, thank you, Kimberly. Hello,
Hello,
can you state your name and get you sworn in?
Bahram Hashim.
Denise Bridget,
Perfect. Do you both agree to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
yes.
Okay. Anything that you want to share about the application? Or just,
Had a water damage last March. And our insurance company sent that engineering company over, and the guy, after checking it, said the roof is in disrepair, basically. There are a lot of issues. So they are allowing us to replace, insurance allows us to replace 700 some slates, but the slates, the originals, there are some original slates there that they're really old. We've tried over the 20-some years. Whenever some slates were bad, we replaced them. But it makes sense now to go with shingles.
anything about the box cutters that you could just add?
The box cutters, what happened was because the house has settled, the box cutters, they have a low point where we don't have a gutter. So, like, when we had the water damage was because the water table was raised above the lowest point and it went inside the house. So, we have to remedy that. I don't know how we can do that, but
And I'll add to that, like, we've had consistent water damage from the box gutters in the 20 years that we've been there. Despite the fact that we've consistently maintained as much as we possibly can, we're pretty impeccable about our home. You know, we never filed anything to our insurance for water damage in the house. We just took care of it ourselves. But this one was pretty major. You know, went through the whole master bedroom, destroyed the floor, furniture, plaster walls. I had just redone the bedroom that Christmas, just this past December. So, yeah, to Baron's point, you know, we've maintained it, but insurance will only cover for 750 slates. So it would help us out, you know, if we were able to completely change out the roof, so that we don't have consistent water damage in the house, destroying other parts of architectural elements on the interior. So,
Okay, thank you.
yeah.
All right, so, maybe we take it in 2 points, you know, just the A and the B. So I think the A was the box gutters and the B was the roof, but it may be more beneficial to talk about the roof first and then kind of go into the box cutters, but you guys can take it however you want to, but just maybe split it just in case we have to go down that, that direction. Okay,
Yeah, I mean, maybe want to start with the box cutters first.
box cutters, perfect then. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that's an easy one, right?
Okay, yep.
I mean, we have any issue with. We're talking about just replacing in kind, right? I thought.
Yeah, it seems like it's more replacing in kind. I think that's what was recommended,
For which?
the box
Box
cutter.
cutters.
Oh, gotcha.
And the box cutter repairs will, I suspect, also include some adjacent roofing, right? With the same roofing company that would be doing
Yeah,
the roofing
it
box.
would be a lot easier if we do all of it at the same
Yeah,
time.
we do it at the same time.
Because like I said, the house on two sides has settled. So you got, low point in the middle of the house. So we have a lining, metal lining that goes up, but if the water table goes above that, then it just slips, comes through.
And I also would add that there's a degree of difficulty as far as like getting scaffolding up there to do the roof because we're so close to the one neighbor. So it's very expensive to get that scaffolding up there, so we would prefer if we could do everything all at once.
And so I guess maybe it's a point of clarification on the application that it will also, just reading what's being proposed, it will include also the metal work to basically replace metal.
Well,
Where necessary,
maybe-
reconfigure metal.
Maybe add some limb to it. Underneath the,
Would it be to make the gutters taller?
no, I think what they need to do is when they line it up, it goes up maybe a couple of feet, then go up another
Okay, so
feet.
further up the roof.
Yeah.
Understood.
Gotcha.
So the height of the existing box cutters that you see on the exterior of the building will remain as is.
Yes.
Yes.
There will
We're
be
not
metal
gonna change that.
flashing.
Under-
No, you won't see it.
You just talk about like the ice and water shield.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and I'll note the work with box cutters is something I can typically staff.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
but
one-
bundled together.
So I would be supportive of the repairs as they're being described here.
It seemed like that was the easiest one. I agree.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that splitting really buys anything.
Yeah.
So.
Not at all. And I think just more from a staff perspective, if the roof on item B got Victorians, that we were just trying to be able to push some things forward to be able to help offset further concern or damage.
And staff's also trying to be consistent with what we've previously,
That is very,
I recommend it for people with different gutter styles.
yes, ma'am. Thank you. So any further items on the box cutters at all?
No.
Okay, so item B, which is the replacement of the roof.
I think I might be missing something. So you said the insurance will approve 750 tiles.
I think 744.
Oh, yeah, that's what it says here. So you're saying there's more than that need to be? Because this is saying that is how many need to be.
That is, insurance will pay for the ones that they deem,
Hail down.
hail damage.
Okay,
But, I mean, the problem is, it because it's sitting all over, and if you dealt with slates before, you can't just go change one at a time, you gotta change the whole area.
yeah, this is a tough one for me. I mean, slate roofs they're disappearing. They're a big, I think they're a historic feature of these houses. They really add to the neighborhood and to the house, so I don't know.
I may have to say that it is, we've tried to maintain it, but we are the only slate roof in our block. Everyone else, the one next to us, a couple of years ago had the exact same issue as us. And they replaced it with shingles. It has become to a point that maintaining it costs so much money that the more we spend on the roof, we cannot spend it on the rest of the house. And also we can't find anybody, just the number of people who are maintaining this feature is, there are not that many guys anymore left.
And I would just add that I completely agree with you. The beauty of these homes is the roof. And it does sadden me that our roof has deteriorated so much. I feel that our attempts in 20 years to maintain it are kind of futile at this point. it's disturbing the damage that happens to the inside of the house, despite the fact that we, spend upwards of 5,000 a year to replace slate. That's a lot when you add up 20 years. This amount of damage that we got this year completely destroyed the Lancrusta that we had paneling in the stairwell going up the stairs. We can't find that. That's not replaceable. So again, we're pretty meticulous about how we maintain the home, the beauty of the historical aspects of it, but the roof is just becoming a major problem.
So I'll jump in here. We talked about this internally at our business meeting a couple months ago, and I, as a commissioner, have been thinking about this quite a bit, and how do we kind of move forward. Shared that with our the rest of the commissioners, and kind of where I'm kind of prepared to move forward, and the rest of the commissioners can chime in. But to your point, we are losing slate roofs within all of the historic districts for this reason. And at some point, it becomes unsustainable to tell people you have to maintain 100-year-old roofs, right? But it is such a distinctive feature of the districts that we cannot just sit here and say asphalt is a replacement for slate, because it's not. And it doesn't meet the requirements of the code as a similar material and a like for like. We've kind of accepted that as a well, what are you going to do in the past, right? Like, okay, asphalt shingles with clip edges look like slate. They don't. You guys know that. Otherwise, maybe you live in the neighborhood. So what can we do? Right? How do we move forward? For roofs that have just gone so far past it, we typically allow asphalt to move forward with the appropriate amount of documentation to show that you just can't salvage this. And part of that is that it's almost the asphalt has been allowed more or less because slate is available, right? You can get a new slate roof, and it's wildly expensive. And the commission is not cost is not a consideration. We are to take into, or is not a factor we're to take into consideration in our decisions.
On the first review.
On the first review, thank you, Kimberly. But we've kind of done that, indirectly because of the, just the wild cost of what slate is. However, over time, there are other options out there, right? That we haven't already, I think, given opportunities to look at because asphalt has just been a default. And when I say other options, slate alternatives, I'll say. What the hell? Even now, Kimberly, you mentioned you've seen things out there, but we could consider that are not just asphalt, whether they're composites or whatever. That we might be willing to consider. In your particular case, you've owned the home for a very long time. You kind of know what you got into, right, with slate roof. I joke with my husband frequently. I'm like, thank God someone else replaced our roof before we bought it, because I would not want to maintain slate roofs, right? And so we don't have to go through what you're going through. But if you buy a house with a slate roof, you kind of know that this is what you're signing up for, and you guys have known that. It's why is it this year that is the year that you have to replace this gen with and get rid of all of it after you put this much money into it, right? Insurance is willing to pay for 750 tiles. Let's keep going at that rate, right? And keep it as long as we can. And if we really think we have to get rid of it, let's see if we can find something that's maybe a little bit closer to slate, right?
The problem, I have with this thing is, we are the only house with slate. The house next to us has shingle. The house behind us is shingle. There is nobody around us with slate. And at this point, we are getting to winter again. And if we don't do anything, if I start going researching what's out there that we could do, we could seriously damage our house by not being able to finish the job before winter comes. Most of this damage came from last winter because our slates are flaking off.
So
Now,
I'm going to note real quick that Commissioner Spright's opinion is just one opinion. Do we want to have some
Yeah,
other?
that's what.
Yeah.
Absolutely, it's just one opinion.
From my perspective, and looking at the staff report and seeing that there's been a couple of things done here that seems to follow the architectural review guidelines that's been cited. A written slate assessment's been provided. A description of the roof assessments and type and total number of roofing squares has been, identified, clarified. And certainly I think there's evidence, in the slate assessment as well as hearing from the applicant here that the roof is beyond its useful life. So
I think it doesn't, maybe I'm missing something. It appears to say to me that it's repairable,
It does.
that the leaking was due to debris buildup. Yes, some of it from slate, but it was
So
due to the downspout and the water going behind the gutters.
there is the engineering report at the start of the application.
Yeah.
There's also the assessment from the
Verbal slate.
the next
Yeah.
piece of information.
Yeah.
From working class roofing and siding. So they have an analysis here that talks about when the roofing was likely installed, what it's consisting of, various repair materials that have been added over the years. And it ends with an assessment that it recommends complete replacement and it states that the roof is beyond its serviceable life. So from my perspective, I am feeling like this application has provided the evidence that similar applications have been asked to provide. And, I would find much of the application to be appropriate.
This is the problem I have, is you could, literally in the same application, you have an engineer report that says the roof is repairable. And
Sure.
and you can shop around, and I'm not saying you did that, like, that, I don't wanna, that's not what I'm saying. But this is what we see, is that you can,
the engineering report has nothing to do with the life.
right,
He just.
for sure.
writing
But I
the
can get
report.
an asphalt roofer that also can do slate repairs, that'll say, this roof needs to be replaced. It's a 100-year-old slate roof, of course, it could use to be replaced, right? And that's what it says, but that doesn't mean that it also can't be salvaged, right? So the codes, the guidelines say you need a slate report that says what it says, right? But that doesn't mean that a slate contractor cannot replace or cannot salvage the roof, right? I mean, I guess basically, if you want a contractor to pay a contractor to say what they want what you want them to
He's
say.
not gonna be the one who's gonna replace it. We don't know who's gonna replace it.
Right.
The guy who wrote that,
Sure.
the guy who wrote that report is the guy who's been maintaining it for 20 years.
I think,
And he's really one of the last guys who goes up there and changes these things. So
I think we can help move it forward. I think this application is not necessarily about, I'm gonna say, the applicant and the true application. I think this was an opportunity to just kind of talk about the pickle that we are in. And so just to clarify, so then that way you don't feel like from a homeowner perspective that you're getting picked on. I think the dialogue just needed to happen because I think as a commission, we're in this pickle as we kind of continue. I think the information, I think to Kevin's point, the information that was provided is appropriate in terms of the level of documentation that staff had provided, which I feel like what I'm seeing is that the staff is recommending, us moving the application forward as submitted because of those things and the challenges from that perspective. But I think a lot of us were trying to be quiet to allow Reed to communicate the pickle that
we've been in this pickle for
Yeah.
20 years.
for sure, and we understand. So,
And it doesn't mean I can't try to sell my fellow commissioners on my opinion.
yep, I understand.
And the only thing I'll answer to you when you said you knew what you were signing up for when you bought the house, we actually didn't know what we were signing up for with the roof.
Okay.
I signed up for that house as somebody who's more passionate about historical homes and the interior, but that's the honest truth.
For sure.
But we have tried for 20 years. And I would say that neighbors, if you know, it can't be just, you know, picking on one, you know, individuals that come here when the neighbor 2 years ago just had their entire roof replaced because of massive water damage as well. So,
But we do have applicants that come in and do entire new slate roofs. It's not unheard of for that to happen, you know, and I know,
And,
that, you know,
and I explained to you, I said, the more we spend on the roof, the less we can spend on other parts of the house.
right.
So.
But our
you know,
code-
it's-
our-
I'm gonna
everything is
just-
give and take.
I'm gonna maybe step in for a second and say that I would like to go ahead and move the application forward. And I think the dialogue back and forth is completely understood, but I think that right now, in order to help the conversation, let's kind of go back to just the application
Okay.
and not maybe have the back and forth. I think we understand from a homeowner's perspective. I think we understand from a conditions perspective, the pickle that we're kind of in. Do you feel like you?
I just want to say that
Yes,
the code says it needs materials, need to be the same materials.
Agreed.
And asphalt are not the same.
I agree, and I think we have ignored that, and that's why your neighbors have asphalt roofs. This commit, not necessarily this commission, but the commission in general has ignored that, and I don't know that that's right, and but I don't think you go by precedent if precedent was wrong.
And I think from a perspective of just kind of clarifying that, I think that there's definitely a pickle here, right? I think that it's warranted to continue the conversation. But I think at the same time, if we go back to the staffing report and we look at the staff recommendation is to be consistent. And I think that's what we're trying to do in terms of what we know and how we follow the guidelines. So even though, right, there's some points that were made, I just want to make sure that we get back to consistency. And make sure that we don't pass a burden on just because we don't know. That's, I just want to make sure.
That's
So-
fine, I disagree, but that's.
So as I said at the business meeting, I understand all of that. And the commission is free to vote how they're gonna vote, but based on what I've said today, I'm gonna vote how I interpret the guidelines and the code. And everyone can vote how they choose.
Sean,
Awesome. Yes, ma'am.
I'm gonna suggest a straw poll before we call a vote.
I was gonna do that. Yeah, okay.
Are missing one commissioner who is not present.
Yeah.
And on the off chance this goes to a vote and ends in a tie, it's gonna be denial.
I don't want that to happen.
It's,
Yeah.
the chair doesn't want that to happen, staff doesn't want
I
that. to
didn't
happen.
expect that to be the case. I'm not trying to create trouble.
No, I didn't.
It's put together over the course of many years with many test cases and 5 of the commissions that were present and accounted for at the time of that list being assembled. We're down to 4 only because one commission got absorbed into another one, but, and to Commissioner Spright's point, if we want to talk about alternative slate materials, the applicant does have to submit that. There have been a couple approved in some of the other districts. There have been some proposed as well. I'm not saying that's the route we need to go down because my staff report does say to approve.
Yeah.
So, Sean, if you want to do a straw poll, I'm gonna leave it up to you.
And I'm gonna ask you for a favor before we do that.
Okay,
I understand all the information that was presented today, both
yes,
sides. It would be great, because I feel like there's one commissioner that is maybe potentially on the fence from a standpoint of maybe where they may go. Don't want to necessarily. So is there anything that you can help us that might have went into the staff recommendation that would help us from a straw poll perspective? To try to help clarify why the staff recommended as such.
I mean, based on previous applications with the exception of the last one, which I know was a little controversial. Just from feedback at the business meeting, but this kind of is in line with other applications across the board of where we've seen the slate deterioration. And picked a bad set of months to ask me for things. My
No worries. No worries.
ability to form coherent sentences doesn't always present itself as useful. But
Is
we've-
it fair to say that right now, from a staffing perspective, the staff didn't this has probably been something that is probably communicated amongst the entire HBO,
Mhm.
right, staff. And your leadership has probably weighed in on this one. as well.
Yes, yeah,
So,
the leadership reads and looks at all materials as well, so I'm not operating in a void.
okay.
And if we do need some further discussion about the approved shingles list, if we want to talk to the HBO, I can ask the HBO if he'd be willing to provide some of that background, because I do believe he was around.
Isn't that two separate things? You have an approved shingles list, and I get that,
Yes.
because shingled roofs need to be replaced too. But replacing slate roof with shingle roofs, that's a different question.
But they all would have historically been slate.
Oh, I get that. I get that.
But was that the underlying intention of, and maybe that will help get Pete there. It was that the approved shingles list was intended to also be a blanket approval for slate replacement?
I don't think that's correct, because we have.
No,
other
because
things-
you've got the amended guidelines.
We have other things saying, this is what you need to do if you are going to propose replacing slate roof with shingles.
Right, but if, assuming you did those.
Sure, but
Was-
so it wouldn't be a blanket approval, where you
Mhm.
simply
Maybe
pick from
maybe
this
it's the
list
wrong
and it's
word.
staff approved.
Yeah.
I think he's asking, was that the reason for the shingles, the approved shingle list?
We need a little bit more discussion from the HPO to provide a little bit more background.
Because if so, they gotta change the guidelines.
You know how many years we've been saying that, update the guidelines?
So I just,
Like, let's not get too far, like, it's a difficult thing. If we want to have some further discussion with HPO about the background, like, let's do that.
So Pete, I think this is, these are things that, I think it was intended that direction, right? So if I start thinking about decks and I want to say, porches in terms of wood replacement like for like, or columns in terms of, there's technologies, there's things that kind of continue to evolve, right? But at that time, what was known and what was kind of determined at that time, that's what was determined, for all of these. It wasn't this plus synthetics plus, all of these other things that have come about. So I know that we've touched on this a little bit with our kind of I'm going to say the continuance of new technologies and new products coming online and how they may start to maybe need to inform the guidelines or the guideline refresh. Not saying that this is not one of them, but
Yeah.
this is probably another one of them that could stand for it. So I'm not just trying to stray you in one direction. I just want to make sure that you have everything that you need in order before I do a straw, because I just want to make sure. That's all.
No, I hear you. I hear you. I will say the other things that we have talked about, party and things like
Yeah,
that.
yep.
They'll look exactly like what they're replacing.
Yeah.
And the replacement materials aren't the same as what they're replacing. And if you were to use wood, it's not as good as the wood you're replacing. So
Amen. For sure.
I put those in a different category. They're
Yeah.
not changing the
For sure.
overall look of the house.
For sure. I think the only thing that we can do, I think that there's probably been a few applications that have been on the table. And I think I've gained more confidence because we have pushed them back into HPO for another look.
Yeah.
And at the same time, and not necessarily stopping at staff and asking the HPO leadership to really weigh in. And I think they have been providing that backup. So it's not necessarily an opinion discussion. It's like we really are trying to stop and make sure that we're in alignment,
Yeah,
with HPO. So I just, again, I think that we're pushing, right? But I don't want the burden to fall in the wrong spot. I want to make sure that the burden, and that's why I let Reed kind of speak and wanted to make sure that the content was percolated, because we need that content to make sure that we get back to HPO. It's not related to this really true application. It's more so
But it
the
is,
dialogue. I
It is.
understand.
because we've got this one in front of us. and
But you understand what I'm trying
I
to
know where you're coming from.
is
Yeah.
there any world where this is tabled instead? Because a denial would outright kind of, what would be the consequences of that?
They could appeal.
They could, okay,
Yeah, so with what Reed's talking about, just because he said something, theoretically, if the commission were to not deny it, there's a couple sections of code that you might be able to appeal on. Reed mentioned financials. That's one of the things that folks can do. It's a little tedious. There's strange and unusual circumstances, as well as the commissions being capricious, unreasonable, and there's one other thing that I always forget when I'm contrary, arbitrary. Thank you, Sophie. And it can either come back to the commission, which we typically recommend, or it can go straight to the Board of Commission Appeals, which if we have to get to the Board of Commission Appeals, we will get to the Board of Commission Appeals. It's just a lot of explaining for that. And I would rather continue this application than have to go down a rabbit hole of a denial and an appeal and BOGA, because that's a lot of work across the board.
Maybe
Now,
we
I have
could,
one more suggestion that may, you might want to look at with the insurance company. And it's an Ohio law thing that I learned in a way that it doesn't matter, but is that if you go down a path where you're looking that somehow slate gets taken off the table as an option, and that insurance is going to cover, like, because if you were going to switch to the asphalt shingles, insurance was still going to cover that, I assume.
The insurance will only pay for what is damaged. It's up to us what we choose to do with it. Now, getting back to what you were saying, the house next to us did the exact same thing happened. That was we were the last two homes with slate, and both of them, our house was built first. That house was built second, as it goes north. They were built, I think, built by the same builder.
Architect.
So the slates were exact same age. We maintained it. They did not maintain it as well. So when a few years ago they had the water damage, their whole third floor and second floor and part of the first floor got damaged. We've tried our best. At this point, like I said, we can, in perfect universe, go and change the whole thing to slate again. But it's really for where we are located, the block that we are located in, the house itself, it costs more than the house. And if we ignore it and it just slowly damages the house. It's not gonna, we are not gonna change the whole slate.
Hear me out. What I'm saying though is that with a roof replacement in Ohio, in that the insurance company can't just replace pieces of they can't hodgepodge a replacement of a roof. And in the case of if we were to not allow an asphalt roof and slate is not going to be you're not going to go forward with slate on whatever basis as it's not maintainable because of what was pointed out, that it's not serviceable anymore, and that you have to choose some other product. Their insurance may cover the entire cost of having to replace that entire roof, is what I'm saying. And you'd have to look into that with your insurance company, but
I think we pretty much did, right?
as for an alternative slate product. So
What our insurance company, insurance companies are not gonna suggest anything that.
No, but your roofer might. So
So
I don't
basically,
want to.
Not being a lawyer, we haven't, like I said, we've never filed an insurance, even though we had multiple years of damage. The insurance company just
I know.
said, we're gonna pay you this much money, whatever you do with it, it's up to you.
Yeah.
Now, if I wanna go back, my biggest issue right now is time of year. And last time I didn't know we had to be here, I apologize. So it actually pushed it one more month. We are going against the time, and we also have, as you see, these slates are really old, they're over 100 some years. And you can't, like in that picture, if you see, there's an old slate and there are a bunch of new ones around it. To just change 744 of them, we basically have to change almost all of them, because they are not group together. And, you know, that asphalt the shingles, it just protects the house. We're not, you know, this is not a game for us. We're
No, for sure.
trying to protect the house.
For sure. So I think, obviously, straw poll, from that perspective, we don't want an appeal. I am concerned in terms of the damage of the home, that the survivability of the interior of the home, the balance of the
I
structure.
mean, that's historic
Those are-
preservation. in and of
Those are the
itself.
things that just me, I'm elevated in terms of concern. And so I don't want it to go down an appeal perspective.
I don't either.
All right.
I have a proposal. I think we continue and then maybe Reed and I can speak with somebody, I forget the. what's
The
the
historic
office?
preservation
Yeah,
officer.
yeah.
So do we need any additional materials from the applicant?
And that could all happen relatively quickly. If let's say the answer is no.
That's what you ask for, because the turnaround to get on October is a week, which I know can be kind of tight depending on what they're asking for. But if we are going to continue, I do want to see them back on October if we can, because as they've cited, you know, they've got some weather related concerns and you know, other people have stated, those are valid concerns, especially I think with how this year has been going. And I can't promise anything about HBO. I do know his schedule is a bit chaotic at the moment with some other things happening in the office. So, and I'm also going to be stepping out on leave, so this means it falls to Sophie to handle. But we can get that dialogue started. I'm just not. I can't promise that it'll happen.
I
Before
have
the
anything to
next year.
say, and please consider it. Our interior has been waiting on the roof. We have a hole in the wall. If you go back to one of the pictures. And if we have a second water damage because of the roof is been like this, the insurance is not gonna cover it again.
We've been waiting since March. This has been like this since the second week of March.
And then, you know, it's like right now we are talking about the integrity of the floor. Because luckily, it didn't damage it as much, but
Well, it didn't seep through, luckily it didn't seep to the first floor.
you
Thank
know,
goodness, you know?
they leaving it month to month to month for something that was approved for our next door neighbor, this side, 2 doors down that side. And we are just stuck in the middle of this thing, well, push it to 1 more month down the road. We don't have time.
And besides that, and I really want to apologize, I know we're taking up a lot of time for other people to come up here. The other comment that I want to strongly make is we do not want to go through a huge expense for this roof. We put a lot into this house. I will say the majority of the homes, if not at least 8 of the homes on our block, are absolutely falling apart. They are not up to code. They are not taken care of. If we were to turn around and try and sell the house, we're not going to get our money back for what we've put in. And that is due to the homes around us. And that is the truth.
Thanks. No, I
I,
really appreciate it. So.
The code is the code. So those, you know, folks should also be held accountable.
For sure.
I agree.
I would, you know, thinking about what we would ask the applicant for, I'm not sure would come up with other evidence to answer that question. I'm not sure what we'd be asking
Okay.
for.
Yeah.
I also just want to raise, talking about code and guidelines, you know, I'm just reading the, you know, documents here that we have on paper and what's, you know, supposed to really determine our judgments. Listed under appropriate is, you know, if historic materials must be replaced, selection of appropriate roofing materials as follows. Number 3 is asphalt or fiber shingles, preferably in gray tones that simulate the appearance of slate.
Yeah, and those
So that's item
guidelines
3.
are from 1988.
Despite being outdated, they are further reinforced by the things that were in the staff report and
As well as the approved shingles list,
Correct,
which came
correct.
about, I think, 2010.
and then for something listed as not appropriate, it says replace in item B, replacing original slate or tile roofing before obtaining an estimate of the cost. So an estimate of the cost has been obtained and has been submitted to us here. So for me, I feel like there is evidence and enough demonstrated here by the applicant that replacements as submitted is warranted and appropriate.
So,
Thank you.
so Pete,
Yes, sir.
I just want to make sure that, did you hear all the things that Kevin has kind of pointed?
I did.
Okay.
Yes, I was paying attention. Yes.
So you want to go ahead and call a straw vote? That's okay? I understand from that perspective of what you're looking for. I just don't know if that's going to happen from that perspective. And so I don't know what else we can provide that would at least hold maybe the position from that perspective. But if I was to call a straw vote, I'm going to say individually, Kevin, you
I'm in
feel
favor
pretty
of,
comfortable
approving as
as submitted.
submitted per the staff report.
I'll go next. From a standpoint, I feel pretty comfortable based upon the information that's been provided. And really, it's because of the due diligence over the last 2 months of us pushing it back. There's been a couple of applications. So I feel really comfortable from that perspective of staying consistent to what the current guidelines are. I did allow the conversation to continue, and the reason I did, because I think there are some great points here. It's not necessarily, yes, it's through this application that the voice is being heard, but I think it's something that we need to go back through. So I think that's why I wanted to respect these thoughts, because I think he has some great points from that perspective. So that's maybe those thoughts. Read.
As I said,
Yeah.
obviously I'm a no, and this is, you know, going forward, I will be no's on these types of applications for the reasons I've mentioned.
I understand.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a no as well. I hate to do it. I understand where you're coming from. 100% understand where you're coming from. But it's, I mean, our job here is historic preservation. And once that roof's gone, it's gone. It's in the landfill.
All right, thanks, Pete. Thanks, Reed. Thanks, Kevin. Okay, so
So
if
then
you're
the
not-
next question is,
Yeah.
are we okay with continuing this? I'm going on leave shortly, so Sophie here is taking over for me. So she's not sworn in, but
We don't know what to do.
yeah, I think some of it is going to be, we are missing a commissioner. Which I don't know where Commissioner Skinner falls on any of this. And we are not fully seated either, which unfortunately doesn't help any of us. At the moment, staff's recommendation is going to continue to be from the approved shingles list. And Sophie and I will try to coordinate as soon as possible with getting our historic preservation officer to talk to Commissioners Schuler and Sprite about some of the concerns and questions that they have with the approved list, which that feels very unfair to you, and I have to apologize.
I agree, for sure.
Um,
For sure. Would you be able to, I think one of the things is just thinking about time, and if I was a homeowner, the uncertainty, I think I would have elevated concern.
Yes,
It's just because we're familiar with the process and they're not. So I know this is a quick timeline because of the way where we are, but if you guys could talk about timeline a little bit better, so then that way
So,
they would understand.
yeah,
that.
with, since it's looking, if we do a vote as submitted, it's going to end in a denial. My suggestion would be the continuance, but that ultimately is up to you. If we do continue because what's being asked is being asked of staff and not of you, we're automatically putting you on October. I don't think unless the commission has any additional requests.
So it's gonna be the same. We don't have anything in.
I guess, so were we denied today?
No, we haven't
No.
voted yet.
Nothing's been voted upon as of yet. That was just to try to get the temperature in the room
Yes,
because
we're
we want to
discussing
make sure the
options.
option is right.
As well as we want to make sure you're.
The option right now is limbo.
Yeah. But we want to make sure you're informed because you get to choose, do you want to vote, for an approval or denial, or do you want to continue it? Which I know neither are great options because they both, either way we're going is going to be additional work and additional time.
If there's a continue, Kimberly, can you outline when potentially that will be resolved for them?
So the soonest it would be theoretically.
Right, I know it's speculative.
Yeah, so if we can get Jamie, who's our historic preservation officer, to discuss things with you prior to the business meeting, which the business meeting would be on September 24th, theoretically. If Jamie would be talking with commissioners Schuler and Sprite and was able to change their mind, as well as we had a quorum at the business meeting, theoretically, they could move it to staff approval then. If that was not able to happen, or if we didn't have quorum, or if not everybody agreed, it wouldn't be until that October 8th meeting.
You know, some part of our roof is shingle.
Is the addition?
It's been there for many years. So, I mean, if,
Second floor porch addition.
so it's not like directed, I said, like we are trying to create something that it's so god ugly that, you know, suddenly the whole character of Victorian village is gonna change. The houses up and down from us have changed the character. The CVS and all the 18-wheelers that come and go, shake my third floor office daily. I mean, I don't mind having a historical, but if we're just picked on, and then everything else goes by. Like I said, that house next door to us, same thing happened, same time, they built both of them, same time. Now, we gotta go, another damage to our house.
I think just with the two options that are on the table, I think I'm really trying to
I know you are.
No, I think from I think all of us are really trying from that perspective. So it seems
This is a very unusual situation. I want you guys to understand that. We almost never don't vote unanimously. I don't know that that ever happened.
That's correct.
correct. And it seems like with the two options, right? So one option from an appeal perspective is challenging from a standpoint of additional damage, all those things, and because of time as a
Yes.
result of that. So I think we're really trying to move sensitively
Getting contractors.
to be able to do
You
that.
know,
For sure.
these days are
Exactly.
not that many contractors.
That's correct. So the other option, which I think is continued, I think is the more streamlined option to be able to offer just a small window of opportunity to get HPO leadership to communicate to the team here. And I think that's what they're asking for, is that additional clarification from that perspective.
You know, I don't think we have much of a choice, so it's in your court.
It's ultimately your choice.
Yeah.
Not really, you know, my choice is to go ahead and change it because I want to keep our house as complete as possible without too much headache. I mean, we are getting old. Nobody's buying these homes. Young people don't want it because it's a lot of headache and we are getting old. I just don't have the energy and patience of dealing with contractors constantly. It has taken us the whole summer to get 3 bids on this house. Nobody does it anymore.
I think some of the hardships that have been talked about, I think that these are definitely understandable. So just trying to go ahead and move the conversation if possible. So does it seem like that continuance is the right way to approach that?
I guess so.
Just,
I mean, that was one option we did discuss, is they could amend the application. Right?
True, but based on discussion, I think.
I didn't propose that
one.
one. I didn't propose that one in terms of amending the application because it seems like the dialogue was,
I'm just saying.
Okay. and I don't know if the homeowner is in that position from that perspective. So,
If speed, if speed is a factor.
so what Reed is basically saying is that there's a third option that you would be willing to amend your application to replacement with an alternate material that would be more in common.
What is the
Or replace the
alternate
slates,
material?
or just replace the slates as
But
the broken
issue we
slates that
have
are
with
on the
changing the
engineering report.
slates is it is gonna basically be the whole roof. and we don't have the money for them. It's, as you see that, they're not sitting together, all the bad slates, they're spread all across.
Sounds like that's not an option.
Understandable. Did it-
And
very
I
well.
don't know what is it, the replacement slate, do you have a plastic, like a rubbery looking,
There are alternative products out
Yes, some of them
are
are.
those approved?
They are reviewed on a case by case basis. We don't have anything on the approved shingles list. Which we can always discuss.
But do you have shingles that look like I've seen a lot of them, that the shingles look like slates. There are on, actually a couple of houses on the park, right around the Goodell Park.
I would have to know the addresses to be able to look at.
there. The one right on the corner of Park and
Well, if you're
Waddles.
talking about the Coco Mansion,
Yeah, that's actually.
he was
slate.
not allowed, that is actual slate, because he was not allowed to use alternative slate.
No, I'm talking
No,
about
you suppose-
shingles
Yeah.
that
Great.
look like slates.
Great.
Yeah.
I understand. So I think what I guess what I'm hearing though, is it seems like if we were to continue the application, I think some of the dialogue that's percolated today, that you still have the opportunity to amend or change or whatever you want to do from terms of the application over the next 2 weeks by this clarification is being offered. And then that would allow you to show other addresses, potentially work with staff of being able to look at alternate products too as well. And it feels like that may be the right.
I can't show you pictures of houses with the shingles that look like slates. But if your stand is, you're not gonna allow anybody to change, if you're telling us, we are from now on, we are never gonna allow any slates to be replaced by shingles. That's one rule. But if you're gonna do, no, you yes, you know.
If it's not being
You know,
consistent.
No.
Because I think he's using the example of our neighbor that just changed their entire slate roof
But I'm
2
saying,
year ago.
I'm
the same
saying
issue.
huge mansions that they have shingles
That's
that
not
look like
consistency.
slates.
Yeah. So I think the conversation, I think you guys have been able to communicate definitely your points. And so I think what we're trying to do is if we were to move forward, it may feel like we're not listening. And then I think that's maybe the clarification I need to offer. It may feel like we're not listening right now because we're sending you down or we're hopeful that you take a path of continuance. We're sending that path because we feel as though that if we go down the path of going for a true vote and then there is a standstill and it doesn't pass, then it's an appeal process that's gonna extend. And so it feels like with the continuance, it feels like that's the best path.
Mhm.
And it
There's-
allows us to explore
options.
these 2 or 3 things. I know it's not what we wanted to hear today to be able to move it forward, but I guess we're trying our best to kind of try to help move forward without the hurdles that have been talked about. And again, this is not, I know it's the application that we're reviewing, but it's not us picking, choosing, or being picky, choosing to based upon the application and you guys just happen to be the applicant. It's really a bigger concern or issue than that. It's that,
Yes, we know it's not personal to us. What
For
we're
sure.
saying is
yes,
there needs to be consistency.
and I think that's what we
And there
want.
there's obviously is not consistency.
That's
And
correct.
that's what we're pointing out
That's correct.
as residents.
That's correct. And I think that we're trying our hardest with what the staff has mentioned, trying to be consistent from that perspective. And I think that's our goal too as well. Okay? So is there a motion to continue, team?
Sure, I'll do that. Let's see, COA 2500-706, 710 Neal Avenue, motion to continue the application.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
If I abstain from this vote, is that gonna cause problems?
I don't think I've ever had anybody ask in quite some time if they could abstain from a continued vote, but as long as it's not,
As long as there's 3 of us, right?
yeah, as long as it's 3 of you, I think I'm okay.
All right. Do you need anything else?
Well, I don't think we've called for yays or nays.
No, we haven't. I just wanted to make sure from a discussion perspective.
From a discussion, I think I have everything we need.
Okay, that's perfect. All right, a call for a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
I'm gonna abstain.
Oh, okay, so applications continue.
What are we supposed to do that?
So I will still send a hearing letter which will summarize all of this discussion. It is on us to coordinate stuff behind the scenes, which we're gonna do our best to in a timely manner, as well as with the commissioner's schedules. And we're gonna see, hopefully we can get something before the business meeting. Because we are scheduling with their volunteers.
Do you have a list of other material?
We only have the shingles list. If you'd like, we can go through and see
So
what the other
when you
districts.
guys, when you suggest that, you are not even sure if anything, that thing is gonna be approved.
I think maybe.
We
would be the ones approving it.
Read. I think
No.
our side needs to be quiet for 1 second. Just be quiet for 1 second, because I don't want it to escalate inadvertently the wrong way. I think right now, so I as applicants, what I would do, okay, is I think what we are trying on this side to be as consistent as possible and try to offer maybe the quickest path forward to help all of the things that you guys have expressed very diligently and well today. I think the best way to work through this next step is through the HPO staff and be able to kind of work through that and ask the rest of the questions. They are 100% equipped to be able to give you those things. If you guys have the right addresses or you have references, that dialogue can happen there and they would be most relevant. I don't think our side would be able
No,
to
I
answer
didn't know
those
if you
questions.
had, because if you're suggesting we go get a different material, I wasn't aware of any other material available. And like you guys have a approved sheet, I didn't see anything else. We were thinking actually about metal roofing.
So
We-
that's
Yeah, we can talk offline.
Yeah.
It might be Sophie, it might be me,
All right.
but we can get together some examples of other things that have been approved. So.
very helpful.
Yes,
Very-
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. No, not at all. It's helpful.
All right. Are we good to continue? Do we need a vote?
Rolling.
Okay. That was a lot, so we're gonna move on to application number five, which is 356 Wilbur Avenue. This application is to remove and replace 5 existing storm and wood windows on the east elevation with the Anderson E-Series double hung aluminum clad windows to match the previously approved windows at 358 Wilbur Avenue, and this is on the opposite side. So this isn't the front, just 5 on the side. HBO staff completed the 2022 site visit for the neighboring unit, investigated the windows and doors, and staff had determined at that time those windows should have been repaired, but no repair applications were submitted between 2022 and 2024, but the storm windows did not have functioning loopholes. The windows on the side of 356 Wilbur Avenue were replaced without approval. And then they came back for review and we did see how badly damaged those were after they took the storm windows off. HBO staff completed a site visit with commissioners on August 28th of 2024 with the neighboring unit. The first floor windows appear to be deteriorated on the exterior and have visible water damage on the interior as well. And the second floor windows contain exterior wear and had damage at the bottom, but the wood still felt solid. With the first floor windows being so deteriorated and signs of disrepair, the second story windows on the side, HBO staff would be okay with the windows being replaced on the side of the house. So this is actually for this year, and I had a typo. So we did complete the site visit. I went out with another member of staff. These are very similar and they don't have the functioning loopholes. They have a lot of water damage on that bottom sill. The exterior also had some mold growing on some of the windows. So in order to be consistent with what has previously been approved, and there's some lack of paint in the areas, but because of the similar conditions that the commission has previously approved, staff supports replacement. Staff recommends approval of the application with any and all clarifications submitted to staff for review and approval prior to issuance of certificate. Basis for recommendation is Victorian Village Guidelines on windows and doors, as well as City Code 3016.11, these standards for alterations, and the amendments to the City of Columbus Architectural Review Guidelines. And I have to apologize, I forgot to include the site visit photos.
Okay, thank you, Kimberly, really appreciate it. Can you state your name, sir, and get you sworn in?
Gary Backey,
Do you agree to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, sir. Is there anything that you need to add to your application?
No, I'm just hoping this is a little easier than the last one.
And
This is the exact same application that I did last year for the other side of the house.
Yeah.
And for all the same reasons, I hope this could be approved. These windows were doomed when they put the storm windows on sometime in the seventies.
Yeah.
No weepholes and it's just rotted through.
understandable. Okay. So, all right, team, I do remember this application on the other side and
Me too.
the hope was is that we would be able to review one side for a little bit of duration of time and then be able to kind of address the other side. So, but is there any thoughts or comments that we need confirmed or?
So Kimberly, would you say they're similar to the windows we saw on the other side? Because I was on
Yes.
that visit. Okay.
Yeah.
Which were bad, so
Yeah.
I'm with them. I'm fine with the replacement.
Okay. Anything else, team? At all?
I've seen enough.
Okay. That's-
We have to be nice to the applicants.
I think you've seen enough of us.
Is there a motion then, team?
I'll be out this one. Motion on application COA 2500-772, 356 Wilbur Avenue to approve the application as submitted.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion at all? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
And thank you for waiting.
Yeah, everybody else, thank you so much.
Yes.
For being patient too as well. We really appreciate it. We'll try to see if we can move as swiftly as we can, but we'll do our best. So thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to application number 6, which is 852 Neal Avenue. This application was continued for last month to remove the overgrown pines and dead shrubs in the front yard, remove and replace the existing stacked stone retaining wall with limestone retaining wall, re-landscape the front yard and tree lawn. New landscaping includes the couple spruce, water fountain, new bushes, and other things. The application is the result of a code violation for work already completed. I've included the minutes from the August agenda, which summarizes some of our discussion. HPO staff does not support the water fountain in the front yard as it does not comply with the standards for site improvement, City Code 3116.13. While the guidelines do not specifically include fountains, that does not automatically make them appropriate. Historically, fountains wouldn't have been found in front yards of middle-class homes such as these. The commission also needs to consider if they approve the fountain on this location, then such a feature could be approved elsewhere within the district. Staff recommends continuation of the application to allow for the design to be updated to better reflect code and guidelines. Basis for staff recommendation is City Code 3116.11, these standards for alteration, as well as the City Code 3116.13 standards for site improvement, and the Victorian Village guidelines on fences and yards.
Thank you, Kimberly. Can you state your name, sir, and get you sworn in?
I was in building.
Perfect. Do you agree to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
Bitter.
And I know that we had a pretty significant conversation last month. Is there anything else that you just needed to offer with your application?
I think I don't have anything else to say myself, but you guys had asked for like drawings and pictures to show that it's more of like a temporary feature. So I included all of those and tried to draw it out the best I could, and then included all the materials that I could get from the company that installed it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, sir. All right, just swinging it back over to us. I know that there was a pretty significant conversation that we had last time relatable to this fountain. And the request was trying to understand if it was considered temporary, what would happen in terms of, taking us away, et cetera. So, Kevin, I know that this one was, if you want to add anything else to as well.
Yeah, I would put a little recap, I think, just for the record. And, in review of the staff report, acknowledging that fountains are not specifically addressed, I thought it was worthwhile to review the standards for operation. So just 3116.11. And there were three elements that kind of caught my eye. First, item 2, distinguishing characteristics of the property shall not be destroyed. I think with the evidence, further information that the applicant submitted about how this fountain's constructed, it's essentially just some PVC pipes full of grade that presumably in the future can easily be removed. So I don't see the front yard being destroyed or really distinctively altered in this proposed fountain. Item 9 about contemporary design not being discouraged when the alteration doesn't destroy such historic significant material, etc. And being compatible with the size, scale, color, material, character of the property. I think the landscape plan that was submitted, the fountain area has a nice relationship with the porch and nice in that it is compatible from a geometry and scale standpoint, as I'm doing it. And there's also a, balance between the tree to the, I believe, the south of the sidewalk, as well as the fountain to the north of the sidewalk that are, I think, compatible landscape features. So it is appearing appropriate in that sense. And then also in item 10, wherever possible, alterations should be accomplished so that they can be removed in the future. I think that's something the applicant has further clarified here, showing how, we've got a few CMU blocks, some CMU pipe, or some PVC pipe, and, that it's not cast in place concrete, it's not significant hard piping. It's something that, to me, appears removable in the future. So the other element of 31/16/13, the busyness of the landscape scheme, to me, that's item 9 that's listed as not appropriate. I don't see the fountain as a particularly busy landscape element, nor any of the other landscape alterations that are proposed. So from my perspective, I would say the applicant's had enough information that I would be in favor of approval of the application.
Thank you, Kevin, for the recap. Any additional comments or thoughts?
Yeah, I'm fine that, it's temporary, can be removed, et cetera. My concern more is with the compatibility in a historic area. So I'm agreeing with staff, essentially. It's a historic area, we're surrounded by Victorian homes, and there's a large, extremely modern fountain in the front yard. I just don't think it's compatible. And that's 31/16/13 of the code. It has to be compatible with the buildings in the surrounding area, et cetera. We had a fountain request between, I don't remember the address. It was recent, within the past 6 to 8 months, between 3rd and 4th on Neal, same side of the street. And we made them change that. We did allow the fountain because now it is essentially it looks like an urn from the street with kind of a small bubble feature on it. So more in keeping with what would be in a Victorian front yard.
Thank you, Pete.
One thing we talked about at the business meeting was where you kind of cross the line into art versus just being a fountain. And somewhere along the way, we brought up the fountain at Goodale Park, and I kind of joked about it. Kimberly brought up said that was put in as an art installation, and I didn't know that at the time because I said, how do you call that Victorian? And in fact, it's because it's not, right? But it's a great example of crossing that path and crossing over there where you have a Victorian park and you put in a fountain. Now, granted, this is not Goodale Park, but I think in terms of the scale and in fact, we pointed out the uniqueness of how this the entrance to this house works in comparison to the other homes on Neal Ave, and that it's offset in relation to the front door in relation to the street. For whatever reason, it has ended up that way over the years, and kind of lends itself to this kind of acting as a correction to that, perhaps. So there's just a different way to look at this. from that perspective. I agree. I mean, otherwise I would say it is out of character for the street, but if you look at it as an art installation um, and in the context of, as a kind of a different sort of feature in a front yard in that way. And I do remember that other fountain that was totally weird.
It was not good.
It was not good. That they had.
But I don't think we should necessarily be making subjective choices about the beauty of a particular.
Correct, right? So
particular
that's the only risk here is when we start going down a path of what is art and what is not. And how do we gauge that? And you know, if this had come in front of us having not been built, right? How would we?
That was gonna be one of my questions. I don't think we would approve it.
Yeah, and that I struggle with, right? Is how because we're not an art commission, and how we would have approached that, and would we have scaled it back? How far would we have pushed back on that? And so it's hard to do a lot of if thens to gauge that. But at the end of the day, looking at it and looking at it in context, and also gathering, the gathered thoughts from the neighbors and seeing it ourselves. I mean, I think the first instinct, wow, that is out of character. But as you kind of have a moment to take it in, it does kind of fit. I think it does. It does fit. It takes kind of a moment to grow on, right? Now, not everyone may have that opinion, but that's the nature of art, right? So
Yeah,
For me, I don't see it as overly busy or
Right.
cluttered.
Yeah, for sure.
And it is, doesn't block the entrance from the sidewalk to the front porch simply because it's a very unique configuration of the transition from the sidewalk to the entrance to the home at this particular property. So, I mean, I guess I do have a question for the applicant.
Go ahead.
With I saw some photos included, looked like maybe from a landscape supply area where there were other similar elements, but not the elements that are actually installed, theoretically proposed. How does the sort of 3 stone elements, how were they fabricated? Are they able to be modified at all by anyone to make them shorter? Certainly the PVC pipe varies in height and is very easy to modify.
Yeah.
Could the fountain elements be made shorter based on how they were fabricated?
I don't think so. The top of it, there is it prevents water from permeating into the stone. It's got a gray top to it, and it's carved to go over.
So it'd be a replacement, if it was shorter, it would be something to fully replace them.
Yeah.
And then the PVC pipe is cut and it's just sort of adjusted as the element comes down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can't get bothered about replacement. We just told people with a very expensive roof that they're gonna have to think of something, so I don't have an issue with that. I think if we go down the path of art, we get into a lot of trouble. Anything can be art.
I'm not sure the applicants proposed the issues of art.
No, but that's one of the arguments being put, not arguments, discussion points being put forth, so I'm bringing that up. I do think I've walked by there several times with many people, some of whom know I'm on the commission, some of whom don't, and there's a bit of a shock, what is that there? I'm not saying it's not a lovely fountain. It's just, I just don't think it's compatible for a historic neighborhood. Maybe in the sense that it's made of stone, scale, et cetera, but it's not anything you would see in any Victorian house back in the day. You don't see it in Victorian Village, period. I've never seen anything like this, and me and my dog are walking around the neighborhood all day. So that's where I'm at on it.
Understand. Read.
No, I mean, generally, like I said, I think I'm good with it. I take Pete's point.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
I think that we had a great conversation last time too, and I think with, commissioner that's not present and kind of working through that process.
I wish Tim were here to kind of
I agree, that wish he was here. And
Just curious, how do we get over the compatible piece? I mean, that's important. That's what we're here for.
Well, but and again, I wish you were here to describe some of that, and then maybe we should let the applicant speak to some of those things, but, you know, we had a long, you read this meeting.
I was at the business meeting.
Yeah.
Yes, at the business meeting, it seemed that people were like, yeah, that doesn't really make sense.
Oh, I don't know, we're at the same business meeting, but,
I was at that business meeting.
yeah,
I wasn't at that one, but I think that the last hearing, I think is where there was a lot more presentation about materiality. And I think it was the hearing, because I was present for the hearing. I wasn't present.
You weren't at the business meeting,
That's
right?
correct. I was out of town still, so, but.
oh, in the same room, that's why I'm confused.
That's correct. Yep, it's the same, it was the same, that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about the, you know, the color of the stone and the color of the buildings and all of, you know, the houses.
I get that, and there can be different ways that things are compatible, but I think we're looking at things from a historic perspective.
Right.
And keeping the neighborhood looking like it's looking like a historic neighborhood. So yes, but I mean, you could do a lot of things with a piece of rock, and many of them would not be appropriate for our neighborhood. I think this is one. But I get it, it's rock, it's water, and I think the fact that it's a fountain is a little bit of an issue right there. We could get past that if it's more of a Victorian looking, something that would be in a Victorian yard, but it just does not appear that way. I can't get past that's one of our biggest things, is looking at the neighborhood and ensuring that the neighborhood stays looking like it is. People aren't doing crazy things to their houses and things like that, so. Not that this is crazy.
I was gonna say, I don't know that that falls.
I was actually picturing vinyl siding when I said that. So I don't mean that. It doesn't look like vinyl siding at all.
I mean, like, you know, and I think of backyards, I'm like, oh, the bocce ball court, the bocce ball things, I know it's a backyard versus a front yard, but
Yes, I encourage it, but I'm always surprised when people come for a plan in their backyard.
So I'm going to propose a discussion point. Would this be appropriate elsewhere in the commission, say Wilbur Avenue or West First or something along Harrison?
For me, no, it's the same argument.
I think if something were on Harrison, we would give people a lot more leeway.
If there was the same landscape plan proposed, at the same architectural style of house on a different street with the same bay window configuration, front porch configuration, how it's been historically accessed from the sidewalk, I would have no modifications to my school of thought on the application.
Yeah, it's same here. I think it's odd for me. For me, I think with the dialogue last time, all of these factors played into it. So it's hard to say that, I'm gonna say if you just pick the element up and place it in another yard, then it would be a different conversation. I would presume so, right? But I think all of these factors played into what is being talked about and why we continue to be able to get an understanding of the temporary nature of the element itself.
So you guys, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, the element itself. I'm trying not to call it a fountain. I'm trying not to call it a piece of art. I'm gonna say the element.
It's fountain. But I mean, you're coming at it I get it from an aesthetic and from a landscape architecture standpoint, and I get that, but that just doesn't address the compatibility issue. And I can get that it's great in all those aspects. I'm not arguing that.
So when you use the word compatible, are you meaning that the design is of a Victorian nature and something that is duplicated elsewhere in historic neighborhood?
I am saying something that fits with Victorian houses. And in general, does it have to be exactly the historic area? No, but we look at what we do with fences and walls, and everything we do is to have the neighborhood have that Victorian feel.
And I'm gonna build off of that a little bit. I didn't want to add on and I was not quick enough, but
Go for it.
in terms of thinking about compatibility, we should also be thinking, can we pick this up and plop it somewhere else? Because from staff point of view, the landscaping, the lawn is historic. And from anywhere from on the park all the way to Fifth Avenue, we'd allow plantings, we allowed trees, we'd allow fences. We have some conversations if the yards are sloped or yards are flat, or if we're adding or subtracting them, yes. But we also wanted to make sure that we pick this up and plop it one street or two streets over, that we're gonna have you know, that we can do that, or we're, you know, creating outlines of like, yes, but, you know, this is why not. Because it's not just aesthetics or like it looks good. Some of it is, you know, is it a kind of, like that urn would have been kind of Victorian-esque in nature and design.
Well, when you asked your question, I just want to make sure I understood it correctly, because I said that we would give a lot more leeway. And they both said, yeah, you would allow.
Well, that's not what I said. I did not say anything about leeway.
Well,
I said
no,
if it was the same.
No, no, I said that.
Basically, if you just move the house.
Well, I want to make sure that
I would have the same
Right.
essential approach.
Yeah.
Right, but I want to make sure I understood it correctly, because you wanted to make sure that like, or I don't want to put words in your mouth, like, my intention was that like, I'm saying that I think that on Neil Ave, we would tend to err more conservative on what we would tend to allow, and that so that like if we allowed it on Neil Ave, we would be more likely to allow it elsewhere. Whereas I think you might have been thinking, like looking to see the opposite answer, whereas like we would only allow something like this as grand as this to be on Neil Ave, and that we wouldn't allow something like this on Harrison because it would be just too out of place and too.
Yeah, well, I'm making sure we're not
Interesting.
being arbitrary because the arbitrary loopholes lead us to Boca, and you would all like
Yeah.
to vote.
No, I just was looking at a different, completely different, and so that's interesting. I mean, I was just, yeah, no, okay, I'm not. So yeah, I guess the short answer is yeah. I mean, I guess you could plop it anywhere at that point from the way we're looking at it.
And then Kevin got a bit more specific with what he's looking at in terms of specific art features and heritage.
Yeah,
Right. Right.
So, I would maybe, want to propose a hypothetical and for maybe staff's consideration and needs consideration. The three stone elements are taller than the fence and taller than the porch. If the stone elements were shorter than the porch and were shorter or the same size as the fence, would that change the evaluation of compatibility in your mind?
I don't think so. It's just not, it's still not adding to the historic nature of the neighborhood.
And I can really, would have the same question for you. Would a shorter fountain of similar aesthetic be any different?
Probably not, because again, I'm going back to that, like what was the original landscaping and like what do we allow for the.
Sure.
landscape?
And we don't allow benches in the front yard, for example, because they weren't allowed that.
And flags are typically unregulated because they're temporary.
Well,
Like a rainbow flag, while it is not something. Victorian,
there might also be some additional things not in Victorian village guidelines that govern the flags and
Yeah.
flags. So, I don't want to speak on that without.
Just because the applicant has submitted photos that show things that are not Victorian in nature at other properties.
Yes, we did review a flagpole, was it
We did.
last year,
Yeah.
about this time, 2 years ago, about this time?
No guidance. Cell phone, right?
Well, much as the word fountain is not
Right.
listed in SRA standards.
Although it's landscaping. Fountain I would consider part of landscaping, which is mentioned.
That's what I was trying to say.
And Pete, you're talking a little bit about some of the compatibility. I'm sorry that you missed the conversations we had last time, but every part of those specific stone pillars were picked for this house. Like at the place that I bought them from, there's a bunch of different colors and stuff like that. The like dark gray sides are the exact same color as the fence, and so that was the inspiration of that. When they're wet, they look more like my house, but then during the winter, they don't need to be covered. They'll look identical to the stone of both of my next door neighbors. There's a lot of like aspects that go into it that I was trying to like add continuity. So I know it doesn't have like necessarily 100% the historical accuracy, but like even when we're talking about like the Good Ale fountain, there was one originally like when it was first built, and it was literally just a pile of stones with water shooting out the top.
Right.
Like it does have like a debatable amount of historical similarity.
In a public space, there were fountains in the area, yeah. And then they did an homage to the circus house with the elephants. Yeah, I get it. And I did hear about the discussion, and I do certainly appreciate that. And I get that aspect of compatibility, but it's just that historic aspect. And you know, I can't, and it's not just this particular application, but that just opens the door for a lot of things.
What is our stance on art in a residential yard?
Are we talking front or back?
Front.
So the Victorian Village guidelines don't state anything specifically, but we be looking at standards for alteration. And that would ultimately come to the commission, and that would also depend on what it is. Because we have had some modifications to the front yard, like that fountain with some seating areas. I can't remember, I think that fountain might have had a seating area, but there was.
The one
also-
on between Third and Fourth, I
Yeah.
think it did, like
Yeah.
a small bench, yeah.
Yeah, and there was some discussion around that, and there was another area that also had a small seating area. with
Park Street, yeah.
Side yard
Funny
parking.
thing.
Yeah.
But that was, that,
Quite art though. But
yeah, but then we go down a slippery slope of what is art
That's,
versus what is
that's what
not
scares
art.
me. What,
And that,
Well,
what
I'm
is art?
I'm curious what that slope looks like, right? I mean,
yes, and I could define it by looking at code, but considering we're not in the usual room, I don't have a laptop with me to like look it up real quick. That is one conversation. If we want to go down it, we can, just let us, discuss art offline.
but as a homeowner, I could apply to put a piece of art in my front yard, right?
Could apply.
Yeah, you could apply.
I could apply to do
Go
it.
sit in the audience.
It would have to be compatible, and the commission would ultimately determine the compatibility.
But art is less, yeah, I mean, I don't know, how do you judge whether a piece of art is compatible? And that's what I mean.
For me, this is easy. It's not, it doesn't look anything like the neighborhood. And in a way, it's, you walk on it and that's part of the shocking thing is you don't expect it. You just see it. It's just, and that to me is a sign of its incompatibility. I mean, you said when you first see it, it's like, it's not something you expect in our neighborhood. You expect the wrought iron fences and the railings, and you expect the wood, the stone, that we insist on for the walls, and all those features that we insist on to create that feel. You see all those and you expect those, and then you see something that's very out of character for it.
So, and I don't want to belabor this or beat a dead horse, but and the reason I'm trying to go with this art angle, because I think it is kind of important, because art is not necessarily informed by history to be compatible, right? And this is my art history minor trying to come out of me.
Yes, but we are in a historic district, the art is subjective.
Right, and if you look at what is approved art in the district, right, it's not historic, right? Things that are approved pieces of art, right, like the murals and the whatever.
Those are close to the short north.
In
though.
public buildings.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're public spaces, right? I get that, but none of those are historic in nature, right? I mean, I don't think anything that's officially recognized as pieces of art that have been through the art commission would be thought of as historically compatible.
well,
Sure, but there's a big difference between High Street and.
There is,
and
correct, totally agree, right? And so then it just becomes like, okay, well, there's a compatibility factor, sure. And so then it becomes, okay, well, what other factors of compatibility are there? And then I think that's where you get to, speaking to what the neighborhood is, and whether it's the colors and textures and the. Now I'm sounding like Tim a little bit, I think, but how else can can it be compatible? I don't know. That's probably the best defense of art I can do. But
Yeah, but just the guidelines are under the historic preservation guidelines. I mean, it's about historic preservation.
right, but I'm saying if you recognize this as art, I think it opens up a different thing. And I would say that I would call this a piece of an art installation, and not to just a piece of. Well, I'm gonna sleep at that.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing, you're right, there's nothing in the guidelines to address that period.
That's how I'm leaving the gap there. So.
Right. So if there's a motion, we're gonna have to, from that perspective, identify, the items from that perspective. I think that trying to stay consistent to the conversation that we had last month. I know if Commissioner Skinner was here, we would get a little bit more of the dialogue, but I thought Kevin did a great job of being able to kind of give us a snapshot and bring us back. So are we ready for a motion at all?
I can make a motion. Yeah.
Thank you. Could you?
For COA 250768 for 852 Neal Avenue, I would move to approve the application as submitted.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Next.
Perfect.
Thank you guys.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, reason for approval.
Item 9, 10, and 13. And I think the one big thing is the uniqueness in terms of how the entry of the home addresses. The sidewalk location as it addresses the home. I think that was a huge component of the dialogue last time. And I know if Commissioner Skinner was here, he would have been able to touch on that a little bit more. But it's no precedent from that perspective because I think the uniqueness of the siting of this location and this home and how it addresses the streetscape.
Yes.
Okay.
So, did you say item 2 in this?
I'm sorry, I missed 2, but 2, 9, 10, and 13, if I remember correctly. I wrote them, tried to write them down. Is that right?
I had 2, 9, and 10.
2, 9, and 10, I'm sorry.
Under
13, 16, 11.
Okay. Thank you, Kevin.
No problem.
Thanks, Kevin.
All right, so I'm going to suggest we take a bit of a break.
Okay. Just a couple minutes, team, sorry.
I do not believe so, unfortunately. We are in the temporary accommodation, so I'm not sure.
Yes, I know.
There was one other item, but I'm not gonna worry about it. But 2, I was just trying to make it not a precedent. One.
It's okay. I knew this was gonna be a long one.
So sorry. Temporary. That was why.
That was discussed.
I think Joe did it, but I think that's what.
Yeah.
Why does the temporary keep coming up? Like, I think I'm missing the thread.
Back to the alterations, so the items that.
Yeah, that's number 10.
Yeah, that's
Where future removal is now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Impair the essential form and integrity of the structure.
So I guess it's just added.
You mean, we don't like read these overnightly and we put them on.
Well, no, I mean, I know that's in there, but I'm like, that could be both. I guess it's just been
Well-
added. Get it over the line kind of language.
Or like certain sidewalk patio elements that touch historic storefront and historic facade building. That would be something where.
I see.
Yes.
That is
Impair
gonna
the
be,
form of the structure.
that will, yes, that could come up later today, for sure.
It does not hypothetical.
Just hypothetical. Yeah.
How are you feeling?
Oh, the chairs are very uncomfortable. I said something last time, but
Yeah.
somebody else has it as well.
Yeah.
I'll be sure to let him answer. Oh, my goodness, yes. Great tomorrow.
I'm just gonna say it ahead of time. Thank you guys for.
Well, I think we owe you a thank you for bringing it forward.
No, it's okay. I want to make sure, just thank you. It's gonna be a little bit later thing, so, but thank you.
I mean, thank you for putting up with me. It's like, I know I'm being difficult.
No.
It's just, again, this has not been easy.
For sure.
I feel like I'm doing like this.
That's why I let you speak. It's important. Awesome.
That was two cases overdue.
Found a window guy accidentally that does old windows.
Like
Repairs them?
Yeah.
Wow.
Like we were gonna get some new storm windows on the front, and my husband was arranging it, and then my husband got tied up in a meeting, and I had to go to the door, and I'm like, the guy showed, he's like, no, I don't do. He's like, I do wood windows, It's like, yeah, I do these, yeah, I like your sash cords and this, and then I'm like, wait a minute, wait. And I'm like, I was not in the mindset to even deal with this, and I was like, and then I let the guy go, because I'm like, he wasn't doing it, and I was like, wait a minute. He does regular window stuff, and I let this guy leave my house? Like,
old.
so I'm like, next time someone tells you this, like,
My understanding is it's about the same cost as a new window too.
right?
To have a window completely refurbished.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me at all.
And the wood's gonna last.
Oh, yeah. So like,
It's still around after 130 years.
yeah, I mean, I'm perfect. I mean, like, I love all my original windows, and I try to, I tweak them as I need
Yeah.
to.
All right,
Where's where we place?
are we ready?
Yes, we are. Whenever you are.
Yes. What is the refusal footage again? Roughly?
Is it 150 feet?
Yeah, it's 150. I think.
Oh, what?
It's either 150.
So
like,
back to back on an alley, I probably should.
Probably, it's also, yeah, to be safe, it's also at your discretion.
Yeah, I'll sit back on these things.
Well, but before we start, I'm gonna call it and then,
Oh,
yeah, so,
Okay.
right, do we have the applicant here for number 7? 50, no, we just did something.
Yep, sorry. Yep.
Yeah, so 56 West Star Avenue. All right, so, we can circle back to this one, but the applicant did tell me that they were unable to make it this morning. So my recommendation was sending a representative or withdrawing it, and I hadn't heard back before we came over, so we'll circle back and continue it if needed.
Okay, sounds good.
But then we'll move on to number 8, which is 357 West First Avenue. This application is to install 13 solar panels on the main house towards the rear of the roof. The commissioners at the business meeting requested additional pictures of the front of the house from across the street. They wanted to see as many views of the roof as possible, and the applicant has supplied the additional photos, which have been added to the material. They also requested a scaled and measured section drawing of the solar panel, as well as documentation of the routing conduit. They will need to know where the power supply and disconnect would be located, as well as if there's any wiring that would be internal or external. The commission previously requested that the panels are flush with the roof. The combiner box is either within the garage or main building, and the trenching won't disturb roots of any trees or communities. HBO staff considers the roofs of structures contributing architectural features, and any solar panels on them should be minimally visible. The commission should discuss if they consider the placement of the solar panels on the roof to be visible or hidden enough. Staff recommends approval of the application with the conditions that a scaled and measured section drawing of the solar panel, as well as documentation of the routing conduit, is provided to staff or a subcommittee of commissioners for review and approval prior to the issuance of the certificate, and documentation of the power supply and disconnect provided to staff or the subcommittee, again, prior to review and approval and issuance of a certificate. Basis for staff recommendation is City Code 3116.11. These standards for alteration, as well as the Victorian Village guidelines on roofs and the National Park Service's solar panels on historic properties bulletin.
Thank you, Kimberly. Can you state your names and get you sworn in?
Barbara Wyrick.
Don Cribbett.
Do you both agree to tell the truth and nothing but the truth? Thank you. All right. Is there anything that you want to offer about the application?
We did submit the extra pictures in it, and the documentation, I wasn't sure exactly what we needed, but Dawn represents the solar company, and we've been very consciously working to make it as inconspicuous as possibly can within the historic area. And he did also bring some photos of as documentation of what the conduits and the different power supply looked like, of what it looked like on other buildings. There was no way to do that on my building because it's not there, but we do have some other information that he can provide you.
Yeah, so I guess we'll, let's start up on the roof. There's no attic space underneath this area, so we will have the conduit from the southeastern corner of the western array up over the peak to the southwestern corner of the eastern array. We will paint that conduit to match the roof. Then from the eastern corner of the eastern array, the conduit will head straight south. It will go over the hip. And then we will use a piece of flashed in conduit. This has a 25-year warranty for the roof, and it allows the circuits to go down through this boot, and then it'll come out.
Also, pretty good.
Also, I'm sorry, yes, of course, that comes up with any color roofs as well. And then so it's gonna go down over the hip, through the roof, and then it's gonna pop out the soffit. And it will run down the side of the building. Just like that. And we'll paint that to match the brick as well.
And that's on the very back corner of my house in the backyard.
And you can, and so it'll come down and then it's going to, then it'll go into the home. And it'll go into the combiner box. I saw that y'all had requested that potentially if the combiners could be inside. So we redrew the site plan, and the combiner is now inside interior next to the main service panel. So the only piece of equipment that will be on the outside of the house, and it'll be right directly next to the meter, will be, this meter's kind of large, so it's not really represented. This is a meter main combo, but it'll basically just have a 60 amp AC solar disconnect, the visible throw arm for the firemen and whatnot, right next to the meter.
There is a picture in your packet of the back of my house where the meter is.
Perfect. Awesome. Yeah.
Questions? Perfect. Thank you. I think that's helpful. Very helpful. I think that kind of illustrates what we were asking for, but in drawing format. So that makes sense in terms of clarifying. I think one item is just staff is asking us about, is the current array that's being proposed with the new images, is that in fact giving us the clarity that we need in terms of what's visible and what's not?
There's the current meter on that, right here, would be right.
Oh, yeah.
In the backyard.
I am wondering, from conduit going over the ridge of the roof, as I think you described, would there be any limitations other than just the homeowner's preferences beside where the conduit would not be routed on the inside of the building? Because certainly that's preferable from a historic preservation standpoint, and that we don't have conduits snaking all over the building.
Absolutely. We as a company, we use flashed in junction boxes underneath all of our solar arrays if there is attic access. This being a finished space, there's nowhere for us to penetrate inside unless we were to come into the ceiling and then go down through the, remove portions of the wall, all the way down through the wall from floor to floor, which is, would, add a, quite a bit of cost to this project. But it, as a company, aesthetics are huge for us. We go the extra mile. Not all companies do it. A lot of companies just conduit all over the roofs, even if there's attic space. We make the extra effort to go into the attic space, up out the eave of the soffit and come down that way. This site is just not compatible for that.
I'm trying to remember what the conduit routing criteria was that we've given past applications.
It is inside.
It's not something that you typically want to see on the outside of the building in our district. So to me, that is a little bit of a cause for, contemplation on our end to consider whether that would be appropriate or not, or if we need something just further documented, at least so we have it as we're reviewing things. Because I don't think that information was in the materials we reviewed for this month's hearing. That's correct.
That's correct. And I think that was the reason why we were asking about the conduit routing and such, because there wasn't enough information in the drawings. And just to be able to kind of understand, I don't think that we even thought that there was a finished space, and even gave that thought.
Right.
But I think through the dialogue, that's what we were asking for in drawing format, but we were able to get it at least today.
Right.
I think one of the things too is this is the first one that finished space has been talked about since I've been on, in terms of being presented.
Mhm.
So just thinking about sensitivities to paint and things like that, how do we accomplish? What is the best way to accomplish? the
Yeah, I mean,
install
from a
material?
historic preservation standpoint, I
Yeah.
think keeping the conduit
Inside.
out of sight
Yeah.
on the exterior of the building is the best way for us to
That's correct.
deem something appropriate.
The NEC code requires that it is 3/4 of an inch off the surface of the roof. So it would be right on the roof. It's not gonna be on like some kind of a mount where it's like up high. It would be, within 3/4 of an inch to flush. And also I noticed in some of the panels are also all flush.
Yeah, so I think that the drawings just need to show exactly where those conduits will be on the roof. And I think that'll help with us in terms of how visual they may or may not be.
Sure, right.
Right.
Or also, if there were any pictures of other jobs you had where the conduit is on, like similar to this job, the conduit is on the roof, so we could see what the painted look looks like. I think that would be very helpful.
I will say that we can provide all of that for sure. We are up against the timeline. December 31st is the cutoff for the IRA. It has been revoked by the current administration. And so as to where we believe that we can, design it, permit it, get it interconnected, built, we're looking at coming up on that deadline for the utility to process all of these interconnections. That's our concern. That's why we're hoping it could move forward today.
I mean, we could probably do it subject
As
to.
opposed to
Subcommittee.
subcommittee or something like that.
That's, I think it can just be with staff.
With staff to be able to.
Staff to the final
Okay.
review.
So I guess, when you're thinking about it from that perspective, obviously they would amend their drawings in order for them to be stamped and approved. Is there any concerns from a commission perspective of what's being discussed in terms of the install though?
Yeah, I'm a little torn because again, we're getting into costs and I know it's more to run it underneath. But again, just with the roofing discussion we had earlier, that's generally not something we can take into account. The cost. Generally, we're gonna ask for whatever's best for the neighborhood. So I don't know how everybody thinks about that.
Yeah, I'd be with you all the way on this one, except for because of where it's gonna be. Like, I don't know that you'd be able to see the.
Oh, the conduit and everything. I think you're probably right.
Otherwise, I mean, totally.
Yeah.
I hate seeing conduits. So.
Yeah.
We do too.
Yeah, like, so,
The western array, eastern array, you have to walk in between the houses, and even then, I don't think you can even completely see that section.
The next door house is very close, on that side.
Yeah, on the west side of the property, we do have a somewhat unique condition in that it's an open lot. It's a fairly wide lot, either for this property or the neighbor, on the west side of the house.
Yeah,
And
there's
while
a
the
wide lot on the
photos
other side.
do,
That's the side that is so close,
that's the west.
and that would be
Or
the
east,
conduit,
but
yeah.
east of the
Yeah, there's a big yard next door.
Yeah.
Big yard.
but the conduit's not gonna be on.
Well, I don't have the drawing and I kind of tried
You're
to
thinking about
follow,
the panels or?
I kind of tried to follow the.
The panels will definitely be visible.
Because the conduit's gonna be going down the back of the building.
Yeah, and I was thinking about the panel layout. You've got two panels going basically beyond the chimney on the west gable, west side of the roof.
Yeah.
So that it seems like there's more roof obstructions in that area. I understand why it would want to be that way, just from an efficiency standpoint. Those would be the most visible. The house next door in blue actually is kind of like the same exact roof profile. And as it shows up in our pictures that they've submitted, you see a lot of that roof. The chimneys are in the same locations. It's, I think, something to discuss how much, I think the guidance on this is somewhat a judgment call, because you can see the panels, but it's whether they are truly sort of like altering the roof line of the home is the kind of the criteria we have to consider. And I know we had an application in here last month that was proposing panels that would be highly visible from the street, and we felt it was not appropriate. So I would worry about those last, that would be the northernmost two panels in the layout drawing and how visible they are from the right of way.
Are you guys following?
Yeah, I mean, does anyone else have opinions on that? That's the two on borderline about
So you talking about these two?
these two,
Yeah,
yes.
I'm thinking just be given the setback that I'm not as concerned. But and yeah, this one's kind of hidden by the chip. These be hidden by the.
I think the 8 on the east side of the roof are not particularly visible.
Yeah, we're talking about these, so these two.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, but you got, yeah, that much roof in between, so.
From a standpoint, as those two, I think what they're looking at is the two arrays that are on the west side of the home that are true or closer north. If those two panels required from a standpoint, I think that's what the commission, I guess that's what I'm hearing. The commission is expressing a little bit of concern, and that's mainly because of the double lot kind of condition that is cited. So it has a little bit more streetscape presence on that elevation.
Yeah.
So those two most forward north ones are a little bit of a concern.
It was based on my electric usage, the number of panels, and originally we had thought more, but we actually cut it back to be the least we could do to offset the electric usage, which is the whole purpose of the panels.
Originally, there was some panels further north on that left
Yeah.
side, but I took them out because exactly what we're discussing.
And there's really nowhere else for the other two to fit, I'm guessing.
Not with the fire.
Yeah.
Not with the fire lines.
I mean, they are set back from the main
That's pretty far.
street facing facade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Since staff recommended approval, I presume HPO was fine with the configuration for the most part.
Yeah. I mean, you've got the foliage blocking it now. If there were ever to be a house built, presuming that is a full lot, that would also further block from the right of way.
Any further discussion is needed?
Um,
So it seems as though that the install clarification, are we thinking that all of this clarification is enough to allow staff to be able to move forward?
Well, I did want to just,
Or-
okay, well, yes, was the short version, but I did want to just clarify also with the conduit situation, because we're also, the conduit going down the outside of the building. It's also something I don't really want to set a huge precedent on, because that doesn't apply to just solar, and in fact, we've got an application, I think, maybe even the next one, which is similar, with HVAC.
The next application is a sign application.
Okay, well, it's coming up shortly.
Yes.
So I just want to be careful about that, but I think, I think we're covering with painting, but kind of take those on a case by case basis, right? Especially, but going third floor to basement in these old brick homes is typically difficult, so.
And I completely agree. I think the only one that, this is the first time that we haven't been able, once the exterior conduit from the disconnect, running vertically up the home, instead of it looping around the box gutters and making its way to the roof.
That's still unknown.
We've been able to penetrate, which I think is what they're doing, right, from that perspective. And what happens when it penetrates, then we have the ability to stay inboard and then penetrate the roof again. I think in this case, with the only anomaly is that the third floor is finished.
Yeah.
You don't have that cavity, so then there's a loop of conduit that goes from array to array. That's gonna be above roof. So I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
So that's the only difference of this install direction comparatively to the installs that have been approved prior.
Well, there's two pieces, right? There's the piece going, once you go past the eave and into one, and then there's the one going array to array.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. That's correct.
And those will be south of the panels
That's correct.
and furthest from the street.
Yeah.
From our perspective, they're as far away from being visible as possible.
And they,
can we condition a motion with that in mind?
I'm going to add a condition to the motion since paint colors were mentioned. I will need the paint chips or color swatches.
Yeah, well, and you need to see the approved plans anyway, or the final plans. anyway.
Yes, I'm just, if you're gonna make a motion, if you could include that in there.
Are you good with staff approval on that, or do you want a committee or?
So that is up to you.
Oh, okay, well, if you're comfortable with it.
Yeah, and that's why,
I'm good with it.
yeah,
Just depending on time.
okay,
I'm good with it.
I'm fine too as well, guys, I think that as long as the motion kind of talks about the things that we've talked about today,
Yeah.
then I think staff will be able to give their understanding of that. But this one is a little unique, so I think that's why they kicked it back to us too.
Yeah.
So,
I
think that's a.
okay, perfect, thank you.
All right, motion on application COA 2500797 357 West First Avenue to approve the application with the following conditions. The applicant will submit updated material showing the locations of the conduits and the paint to colors that the conduits will be painted. And those will be submitted to staff for final approval. That the conduit locations will be to the south side of the home and, to be as unobtrusive as possible. I think I got that right?
Gotcha. Okay, do you think there's anything about attic space?
Yeah, and just to be clear, normally we would say that all conduits should be routed inside the home. We do note this is a finished attic space, which makes that very difficult to do. The conduits will still be routed, penetrating through the eaves and not going around the eaves. And that we are allowing the conduit to go from the attic down to the basement on the exterior of the building, and given this is a brick home, completely finished. And that the conduit will be going array to array over top of the roofing because of the finished attic space, being at a non-visible location.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any further discussion over there? Okay. I'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Unanimous.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Can I completely agree, not go over those leaves?
Yeah.
It's more than just aesthetics. If there's an ice that builds up, it can
Yeah.
pull the conduit off.
Yeah, that could be fun.
Very helpful.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
And just submit to the portal those.
Yes,
pictures?
please. But if you do submit through the portal, please email me.
Okay.
It won't let me know otherwise.
So what is your email?
It's VVC, but I will email you the hearing letter. So.
Okay, great, thank you so much.
Thank you again for your patience.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. We'll move on to application number 525 West Fifth Avenue. This application is to replace an existing monument sign. The sign would measure approximately 36 inches tall by 60 inches wide with an overall height of 72 inches. Commissioners at the business meeting requested additional photos of the older sign as well as additional Google Street view photos of the sign, which was hit by a car. HBO staff would be looking through the files for those signage. Staff has added the Google Street View photo of the sign in 2021 with the previous sign in 2015. The sign appears to have been changed out between 2016 and 2019 from Google Street View photos. Staff does not have an approval on file for that work. Staff also included a 1988 approval for the previous sign, which replaced another sign of undisclosed design and an unspecified location. HBO staff supports a ground sign at this location based on the longstanding precedent for such a sign to be in this location. Staff recommends approval of the application with the condition that the sign not be internally illuminated. Revised sign design and details to be submitted to staff prior to issuance of a certificate. Basis for staff recommendation are the short north design guidelines on signage, the wall sign and the wall sign guidelines.
Thank you, Kimberly. Can you state your name, sir, and get you sworn in?
My name is Jim McFarland,
Do you agree to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
so help me God.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Anything you want to add or just to clarify, given staff's, recommendation or their report?
No, we're trying to keep the existing sign current to the culture, current to the members of the congregation as well as current styles. Utilizing as much of the design of the framing and location of the previous location where the sign has been there for so many years. We're going to maintain the rock features that are around the area presently. And the sign that was hit was it's being reused right now in a temporary structure that's in a couple of 5-gallon buckets until it can be permanently placed in that location where the new stone and rock architecture has been created.
Would you be able to kind of clarify the illumination on the sign?
Well, the sign's been illuminated since prior signs have been illuminated at that location. They wanted to continue that same type without any increase in the amount of light going out from what was there previously, and there won't be any increase to that. We did provide a night view of what that might look like at obviously in dark. So trying to keep it as minimal as possible. The ability to add any kind of other illumination would be very difficult at that location. Externally, due to the rocks and the types of landscape they have, I'd prefer to just keep using the same kind of LED that was in one of the posts, the port posts before, and run that same, just basically tying back into the same electric that was there before.
Okay, thank you, sir. Really appreciate it. All right, so I think staff's approval or staff's recommendation, it was approval, but I think it was the illumination that was causing a concern because it wouldn't be in compliance with the guidelines. So anything else any other comments or thoughts?
Just, I don't know what's up with Columbus drivers. They can't stay on the actual road.
At least it wasn't the building.
That's true.
That's true. That's true.
It's always a positive.
Not that this is any better, but
Yeah, yeah. No, my had the same exact thoughts as staff is about the lighting. That would be an issue at all.
Okay. So illumination wise, I think staff's recommendation, non-illuminated because of how the sign is illuminated, right?
or you could do the external illumination or a halo lit, which is our typical recommendation for short north signage.
Okay, we'd be open to those options.
Right.
So
I was gonna say, the commission can always review options, or if you want to pick one, would we want to do a subcommittee review?
I think, right, it feels like so I think what she's saying is in order to move it forward today, what we could do is if you chose one of those options, it would allow you time to develop one of those options and be able to submit the information back to staff. Instead of coming here, we would be able to address that maybe in a subcommittee review.
Well, I think we could just condition it. Our approval could just be conditioned on staff's recommendation.
So, yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Maybe you don't need to decide.
Awesome, right?
So what it sounds like you're saying is that as long as it's not LED internally illuminated, it could be either halo or external.
Mhm.
That will satisfy the guidance.
That's correct.
That's fine. I'm not sure which route they'll go, but we'll be happy to do that. The sign design will be the same.
So if that's the case, then they can work with HPO staff directly, and then we don't need even a subcommittee from that perspective because it'd be back in alignment.
That's perfect. Yep.
Okay. That makes sense?
It does.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you. Thank
Make a motion.
So, long day.
I can
Okay,
make a motion to take the.
Thank you.
For COA 25-00829 at 25 West Fifth Avenue. Move to approve the application with the conditions that the sign is not internally illuminated and that revised sign details be submitted to HPO prior to issuance of the certificate.
awesome. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, sir. Really appreciate it.
All right, and we move on to application number 10, which is 1127 North High Street. This is to install 2 wall signs on the east and south elevations. The sign would measure approximately 117.6 inches by 25 inches, which is roughly 20.4 square feet. The signs are to be mounted on the brick red aluminum raceway with a 12-volt power supply for LED lighting. The commissioners at the business meeting requested clarification on the proposed lighting. Will the entire sign be lit with LED or just a portion of it? Staff recommends approval of the application with the condition that the lighting is appropriate for the Short North design guidelines. Basis for staff recommendation is Short North design guidelines for signage, which include the general signage guidelines, the wall sign guidelines, projecting light sign, and graph sign.
Thank you. Can you state your name, sir, get you sworn in?
Sure. Michael Mockler.
Okay, would you agree to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Anything you need to add to the application or about the application, sir?
Not really.
Okay.
We spent a lot of time working
Could you,
with Kimberly on this, so.
understandable. Would you be able to clarify or just about illumination or thought on illumination?
It's a halo lit and it is the whole sign.
Okay,
That was the only question that was really on there.
awesome. Thank you, sir. Any further discussion since that's been clarified?
I always forget these. Are we within all the parameters for signs?
Yeah, wall signs are 25 square feet.
Okay.
Businesses can have up to 2 signs.
Gotcha. Oh, good.
And they were adjusted to fit the space.
Yeah, gotcha. I'm good.
Any
I don't
further?
need anything.
Is there a motion?
I'll do it. I haven't done one in a while. Motion to
Switch it up.
Motion to approve COA 25009, 1127 North High Street as submitted.
Would you be able to add anything about the halo lit, just since it was on the staff? Just with that clarification.
Because it's halo lit?
Just clarification there.
Oh,
Yeah,
confirming that the sign, the entire sign is halo lit.
thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion passed. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for being patient.
being patient.
Yeah, we don't all have time to sit down.
Let me go
for this,
first.
but-
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to application number 11-321 Japan Street. This is to install a new HVAC mini split unit for the 3rd floor with the new pad next to the existing HVAC condenser in the backyard. Piping and wiring between units will travel down the exterior of the west elevation next to the existing radon mitigation pipe before turning south to go into the backyard outdoor unit. All piping and wiring would be covered by white pipe. The commission should discuss if this application is similar to those of an HVAC unit or radon mitigation system, and if similar documentation and or requirements need to be met. Staff is uncertain when the radon mitigation system was approved, but recent applications for these have been required to paint the pipes to match the house. Staff recommends approval of the application with the condition that the proposed plastic pipe is painted to match the brick, and a paint chip or color swatch is provided to HPO staff prior to issuance of the certificate. Basis for staff recommendation is City Code 3116.11, the standards for filtration, as well as City Code 3116.13, the standards for site improvements, and the Victorian guidelines on fences and yards.
Thank you, Kimberly. Can you state your names?
Alex Clifford?
Katie Schinkster.
Do you both agree to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Anything you need to add about the application?
I don't believe so. The only thing I had with the painting of the color to match the brick, is it possible to paint it instead to match the color of if we have to paint it instead of just being white to match the radon thing that'd be next to, could we paint it the kind of off-white color that all the gutters are that are coming down? So that way there's not a random pipe that's a different color versus the rest of the pipes coming down the house.
So it looks like a downspout kind of.
Yeah, that's my kind of thought versus having a red one that wouldn't blend into the brick anyways. It would at least look more like a downspout since it's not gonna go over the eave or anything. It would go through that, but that way it looks like a downspout instead of a red pipe.
I've actually seen them hidden in fake downspouts, which looks really good.
Any thoughts from anybody else? Thoughts? Sensitivities, just making sure.
I think, I mean, I live not too far from you, but I think this is not visible. You know,
No, between the house, I mean, from our house, so on that west side of the house to the neighbor's house is only like 4.5 feet there. You can see that it's the gate space there. That's the neighbor's house right there. It's in the back corner from the street. So it's a,
so you're in the street right now, right? If you were.
no, this picture was actually taken, I was basically at, out the front of our house, like looking back. And that's as well as you can see it from there. So if you're, and our houses, it's raised up, like our yards are elevated. So
Yeah.
even you're further down on the sidewalk and you're, see, our house is set back, I think about 20 feet from the sidewalk. So, and the house is 27 feet deep. So you're about 47 feet or so back from the sidewalk.
Okay.
And between the houses like that. So except for when you're literally right between the houses, if you look right back then, that's the only way you can see even the radon pipe there. So it's, yeah, they also have a small tree in front of the neighbor's patio that is kind of scotched that entry, but the space between the houses anyway. So it's not a particularly obvious location to see that.
Yeah, I would say some kind of masking, whether it's the white or the brick, it doesn't.
Okay.
I'm fine with it matching the gutters and downspouts.
Makes sense, yeah.
I feel the same.
I get some compatible.
Yeah, but then it's both, it's stressing both. So with the install and of that, you would address the painting of the radons, vertical radon as well, the pipe for the radon system as well?
Good.
Okay. Yeah, paint them both, same approach. Yeah. Okay.
So slight amendment to the application.
Yeah, are you okay with the amendment of the application to address both elements as part of this? Since you're gonna be providing the color chip
Yes.
to staff, it would be beneficial. And that way you don't have to worry about it.
Okay, that's fine. It's
Okay. Is that okay, Kimberly?
Yes,
Okay.
just wanted to make sure we had that on record.
Yeah, understandable. Good call. Is there a motion, team?
Sure, I'll do so. Motion on application COA 2500803 Tappan Street to approve the application as submitted. Following condition, the applicant will provide a paint chip to staff prior to approval, and the applicants are amending the motion to agree to paint both the existing radon pipe and the HVAC covers the same color at the same time.
Awesome.
Yeah, to match the gutters and downspouts.
To match the gutters and downspouts.
Thank you, Kimberly. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion needed? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed. Thank you so much.
All right, we'll move on to application number 12, 721 North High Street. We have an applicant here for 721 North High Street.
Yeah, it's too bad. That's interesting.
All right, so
No, that's 12.
12. So I'm not seeing anybody for that one. So we're going to circle back just in case somebody's running late.
No worries.
And then we have the applicant here for number 13, which is 246 Collins Avenue. So if you'd like to come up, this application is to demolish the back porch, privacy fence, pergola, 26 feet of retaining wall on the west edge of the property, alter the landscaping, including removal of a maple tree and Norway spruce, and installing 2 off-street parking spaces to measure a maximum of 21 feet deep by 22 feet wide, with 562 square feet of movable pavers, which would require a 26-foot curb cut and 2 utility shutoffs lowered to the proposed elevation, including creating a curb cut and altering the retaining wall. New parking area would include the electric vehicle supply equipment and installing new retaining walls to include blocks of the former wall, as well as the Versalock blocks and the weathered flagstone. A 36-inch high retaining walls would be built on the northeast, east, and south of the parking area, with the north and east retaining walls to be about 18 feet in length, the west wall being 24 feet in length. The back porch would be rebuilt 5 foot wide by 17 to 6 inches long by 8 feet wide, with a hip roof, railing, and skirting. And then to construct a picket fence and gate, and the porch would be painted the Benjamin Moore colors of Lakeside Cabin, copper clay, and painted sands. Staff has included the commissioner discussion from the August hearing. Commissioners at the business meeting requested confirmation that the curb cut would be removing spots and the signage would be relocated from the Department of Public Service. Commissioners should discuss how the proposed alteration meets City Code 3116.13, the standards for site improvements, the amendments to the City of Columbus Architectural Review, guidelines regarding curb cuts, and the Victorian Village guidelines on fences and yards. This is still conceptual, so the commissioners should offer design feedback that can be utilized by the applicant to further refine the proposal for review at a future Victorian Village Commission meeting. And as a reminder, no action is required this meeting because it's conceptual. Basis for staff recommendation is City Code 3116.13, the standards for site improvements, the amendments to the City of Columbus Architectural Review Commission guidelines regarding curb cuts, the Victorian Village Commission handbook guidelines on porches, as well as fences and yards.
Perfect, thank you, Kimberly. Can you state your name, sir, to you sworn in?
Don Dameron?
Do you agree to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
All right, thank you. So, before you start, we'll try to make sure something real quick, okay? Was everyone present last time for this application? Okay, so Pete, you're not. Okay, I'm just kind of curious.
At the hearing?
Yeah, for the hearing for this application last time. Okay, all right, perfect. So what I was going to just obviously kick it to you to be able to, but if you were to maybe just kind of concentrate maybe on the things that maybe or changed as a result of from the last time to this time, and then that may be enough to kind of catch Pete up. But I think that would be helpful to kind of funnel in terms of maybe where we can help you in terms of that next round.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
This was the third review, so guess in developing this project, I think the goal is to minimize the impact on the historic nature of the home with the construction of this off-street parking site. The 3D renderings here, I guess, show the changes that have been made. The privacy fence was eliminated completely, and the picket fence was added across the one side of the back porch, which is being completely rebuilt. And runs across the yard with a gate coming up from the steps from the 2 parking paths. So that's been replaced. The porch, of course, is being reconstructed in a historic style. The latest application has the materials, the colors, as Kimberly suggested. The retaining wall runs on the 3 sides and was brought out by your suggestion away from the foundation of the house. And then the concrete pad was replaced with pavers, as you suggested. So the design of the parking and the porch, I feel, have addressed most of your concerns. There are some other related concerns to the curb cut and the alleyway, Highland Avenue. I guess it's functions as an alley, but in talking with the city roadway department, I think or actually it was public service, suggested if it has curbs and sidewalks, then it's considered a street. But the width of the roadway is 25-foot right of way with 17-foot curb to curb at this location. Curb doesn't run all the way down. There's a lot of existing curb cuts for parking. There was a lot of questions about pedestrian use of the sidewalks and the alleyway itself. And then the transition questions about how the, I guess the parking area would transition to the roadways. I've got some photographs I could pass out if you're.
Sean, I'm gonna default to you if you wanna accept them.
I would love to, just only just from, if that's okay. But at the same time,
I know
you try to
it's-
help us narrow in, you know, what I mean, from that perspective.
Uh-huh.
So,
It's fine for a conceptual review.
yeah,
Thank you very much.
sure.
So these pictures are taken from the south looking north generally. The questions about pedestrian usage, I guess it's pedestrians don't generally use the 2-foot wide sidewalks. They walk down the middle of this alleyway when they're moving through the neighborhood. There were some questions about the conversations I've had with the division of parking and the placement of the existing no parking signs adjacent to the home was related. If you could change to the site plan. No, next one. Wait, go back. Yeah, yes, this is the plan that building and zoning requested with the details. But that shows the general layout. The neighbor on the west side, just south of the parking area, he is suing his neighbor and claiming he has the right to cross his driveway to get into that single spot shown down. As part of that, he went to the city and had all the no parking signs changed on my side of the alleyway, which reduced, it took out like 3 or 4 spaces from the edge of his property line to the intersection. I worked with Amanda Ford to have at least 2 spaces returned immediately adjacent to my house. That's a distance of about 24 feet from Collins Avenue to about where that line measuring the 25-foot right of way is. And then this Amanda Ford agreed to create a space so he could make his maneuvers to get into his space. And there's currently you can kind of see where the signs are placed through these photographs. So that's kind of what I'm showing him, the existing placement of these signs. So there's some questions about curb cuts and my effect on on-street parking. Talking to Amanda Ford, she's suggested that the sign would be moved 5 feet from the northern part of the park area on the road. So that would just eliminate 1 more parking space on the street. So there was a question one of you had about whether this eliminates on-street parking, but given the existing locations of these no parking signs, sign would have to be moved to accommodate the off-street parking. The question was who would do that. In reviewing this with the city process, maybe you don't deal with right-of-way permits and that kind of thing, but once the building and zoning reviews this and determines that the variance, it needs a variance because under zoning, 2-unit building needs 4 parking spaces, 2 parking spaces per house. So this would be a variance because it's only providing 2 spaces and not 4 spaces. I guess that's the way I understand it. You understand it differently.
Building and zoning code is not my expertise.
So it would be a variance, once they approve the variance for just the 2 spaces rather than 4, and it is a historic building, I'm sure. They would look at the fact that you guys have or have not approved the plan, but that's what zoning would do. Once the zoning has stamped it, it goes to 905 permits, which is right-of-way permit, which initiates the review of the construction drawings. And mostly concerned about the apron from the brick road into the driveway paths, which kind of parallel or extend the line of sidewalk. So they'll be looking at construction drawings for that kind of thing. But as the permit is applied for it, they also send it to back to parking for their reviews, how it affects the on-street parking and the removal of the sign for construction and then the replacement after construction. Parking would have to approve that. And then it also goes to the Division of Traffic Management to address the curb cut. So traffic management needs to approve the curb. And in talking to staff today, they didn't seem that at the counter didn't seem to think that it would be a problem to create a curb cut. But as for a variance shouldn't be necessary for that. But I'm not sure until the project runs through all these steps how it would ultimately play out. There was some changes to the construction drawings on the retaining walls or the setbacks or something. But the quick review I had with the eyes on it today didn't seem to be too much of a problem. So just in terms of the questions about the curb cut and zoning and the variances, I mean, that's the way I understand that part of this process. So I guess there's two questions: the design of the elements and the effects on the house, and then the questions of the curb cut, its appropriateness. So obviously I've tried to minimize the effect on the house and the yard of incorporating what you're suggesting, design materials. And so here we are. It's kind of a review. I think I know at this point.
Yeah. I think that the photo is very useful.
Absolutely.
To demonstrate that there's one, a very narrow sidewalk, and two, already a limitation on parking where the curb cut is primarily proposed. So I would recommend you definitely include this in your application to us next time for action. I think
Makes sense.
most of the concerns have been alleviated just with that photo.
Makes sense.
Just to be clear, it looks like you made it deeper since the last time we looked at this.
Yes, actually, I didn't mention that. That is another change. The east retaining wall was slid under the foundation of the deck or the porch floor. So the footer for those two columns on the west side of the porch extend down through the retaining wall. I think the elevation on the provided with the 3D drawings, the contractor drawings I have show some of that detail back through the elevation.
I think last time we didn't have the revised, drawing, but you mentioned that you had done that update. And it's just from a timing perspective, it didn't get into the application materials. But I think this one starts to really, kind of illustrate what you were trying to communicate to us at the last hearing.
Yeah, you can see the foundation footer is kind of extending down.
Cool.
And it shows the
So
railing system across the porch, extending across the yard, the same design, same kind of.
Sure.
With a gate at the top of the steps. Mimicking what you might see at the front of a Victorian home.
So high level, I'm just gonna try to break it down into components and just see if the team is just kind of nodding their head or if there's any concern, just to try to make sure that we touch everything. And at the same time, making sure that, as Kevin kind of started to do, is what else would we need in order to help move the application forward? I think would be helpful too as well. So let's just maybe take the fence, because the fence, last time the fence was, was a piece of a rail, was a piece of a fence that's been removed. I know that Commissioner Skinner was kind of looking at that last time. So any thoughts or any different relatable to the interaction of the railing and such?
The only thing I noticed on the porch, since the house is so symmetrical, the porch is so symmetrical, and the railing is being provided only on one side, even though there's two sets of stairs, I think it would be a more compatible porch addition or reconstruction if the railing was on both sides of the porch. So it's a symmetrical looking element, even though you don't have the sort of fall protection concerns.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's a good catch.
And with the sort of post connections to the porch shown, I noticed that there was a note about a porch ceiling. I imagine that ceiling's gonna cover up joist hangers and brackets and things from site. Like there was a note about
It being open to the, it's the, something like that.
I saw a note about a bead board ceiling, I believe. Tongue and groove raised ceiling. On the elevation page. It's talking primarily about paint color, but it mentions that it's for the column bases, porch fascia, risers, and TG raised ceiling. So I suspect that is a tongue and groove ceiling that goes on the underside of the structural framing that would conceal all the joist hangers, brackets, and things from site. There is a diagram about sort of a 3D diagram showing beams, joist hangers, other galvanized connector pieces. I think it would be most appropriate to conceal those sort of like secondary structural elements with a
flat
ceiling or trim. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be flat. It could be raised just as long as all the connections are concealed. So.
Any other dialogue on the porch itself? I think on the application, I think one of the things that we typically do, because of porches are so intricate, is that there is a section that's provided through that porch, from, I'm gonna say, roof all the way down to grades. And so you can understand how, all of those elements, and then I think gives clarity to the ceiling condition, it gives clarity to the balustrades, just all of that kind of condition. So I think that would be one thing that would need to be part of that next application.
All the way to the ground, or
Yeah,
does it need?
because it with the skirting, it would address the skirting, it would address all of that.
Yeah, I mean, you have a deck section already. So I think you just need to extend it up.
Extend it up.
Get the gutters and the
Yeah.
roof edges, and ceilings, and rafters, and all that stuff. Okay.
All right. Porch, fence, I think we just talked through. Let's just say materiality as it relates to the pad or parking pad location. Anything, materiality wise? Wall wise, interaction with the foundation, interaction with the existing home in terms of the pathway of the retaining wall that was talked about last time.
Something else. I mean, I think you're gonna need all the specs on bricks and the blocks and all of that. The what am I, what's it, I'm looking for the
Dry blocks.
well, it's not coming. The kind of drainage behind behind the
retaining wall.
Yes.
Do we need a section drawing?
Thank you, section drawing, which was not something to me for some reason.
It's okay. It's been a long meeting.
I had gone, for how the retaining wall is being built and held back and all that. Tim's not here.
That's it, yeah.
Can it stand up straight or step back?
It can step back, but just, yeah, showing how that's gonna work and there will need to be some sort of drainage, pipe behind it and drainage rock and all that good stuff. And where that's gonna go in and how your gutters for the porch may or may not tie into that same system and where that's gonna go. that may drain out onto the driveway out, and however that's all.
Anything else on the pad, retaining walls and just materiality, and obviously product cut sheets and all that will be part of the application. Makes sense.
Section to the pad too, right?
Section to the pad.
For the rock, for pulling that, all that, how that's gonna happen.
Okay. Alright,
The foundation drawings, I don't know, for the porch, I assume.
that'd be part of it, that'd be part of it, I'm sure.
It's Versalock, so I'm planning to reuse some of the blocks that I have and integrated it.
We talked about solar panels earlier in the meeting. I'm not sure if we've seen electric vehicle charging equipment in my time on this commission. Both are sort of illustrated in this application and also something that's exposed to view without screening, which I imagine almost every EV charger ever used by anyone will need to be unscreened so that it can be accessed and used and everything. Typically, I imagine they're in garages and we don't care, but this is surface parking for a residence. I don't particularly think there's an issue with what's being proposed in terms of compatibility. So maybe it's more of a question for you, Kimberly, if the historic or any of your colleagues about the historic preservation office's stance on EV charging equipment in historic
I can
districts.
tell you it's come up in my memory one other time, but that was more so somebody asking for a like permanent private parking spot on the street, that parking station would have been in the pre-run, which is a completely different conversation.
But a cut sheet for it, I guess.
Wouldn't hurt.
Yes, I would want to see that.
It would probably be built with the conduit and the wire with some sort of box.
Yeah, it's whatever manufacturer.
So I mean, I don't have any idea what I would be using at this point.
Yeah, I think part of that application, I think, would probably be able to identify that, so there would be some parameters that would be set for that install. So when you finalize your application, if you could give some kind of maybe description and imagery or something of that nature.
Could I just am installing breaker box
However
and
you,
stopping there?
however you wanted to
Come back
articulate
when I
it, so
have-
that way.
Yes.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yes, you could do that.
I
That'd be great.
suspect that there are other folks in the city of Columbus who will want information on this at some point, like for zoning compliance and building permit application compliance.
But I have no idea what the system would look like. So.
Yeah, wherever it's, I mean, whatever you're putting in, like you said, it's a breaker or whatever that's. Whatever the bounds are, just make sure that that's included.
And then I'm gonna just shift to the curb cut itself, curb cut / parking condition. In general, so is there any additional thoughts or needs as it relates to that element?
I feel like the photograph that shows the signs and, being able to relate it to the rest of the street and see, one, how narrow the sidewalk is, two, that the signs are in the middle of the sidewalk and further restrict someone from using it.
Unusable sidewalk.
Could you drill the sidewalk?
And three, that there is no parking, being significantly impacted by this curb cut because there's no stopping, no parking signs there right now.
It's literally one car.
So, and I imagine that car that's shown in the image, sort of cut off right at the bottom here,
Mhm.
that could mostly still park there after this project is, started.
Mhm.
So
Trees, new trees.
there is an arborist report.
Yeah, but that's for the coming out, right?
Trees leaving, yeah.
Yeah, new trees going in.
That makes sense. We're gonna pick up that for Kimberly. And so landscape plan, and just, I think the thought is, as one goes away, one gets replaced. Obviously, you have the arborist report. But just being able to have some indication of that shown in the drawings, that would help.
One concern traffic might have in reviewing the curb cut is for safety, pulling in and out of the parking space. Depending what type of tree would be put back in that elevated space, the south side of the parking. It's just, don't wanna obstruct the visibility from the up and down the alleyway,
Yeah.
pulling in and out of parking space.
And Kimberly, if you just kind of clarify, it's not like it has to be in exactly the same location either. So you have some flexibility about relocating it to sync up with the proposed project. So understandably, but that probably is something I know that probably Tim would very pick up too as well.
Does that need to be drawn out?
At least identify, at least identify. Yeah, and I think you can use a site plan to try to identify some of those things. I think we're just trying to give you all the things that would be needed for the review. If I kind of go back to the pad, or I'm gonna say the traffic or the parking condition, I think it would be beneficial with the photographs if you had the existing signs identified on your site plan and some understanding of where the parking spaces are today and what is the parking arrangement that would be in alignment with your project. So your site plan sometimes has cars, sometimes doesn't. It would be helpful if that would be designated on your existing site plan and your new site plan. Just to make sure, and some kind of documentation that you've talked to those city entities, that will be part of your application. Just, I think, to be in alignment with the curb cut description. So the photographs were extremely helpful, but I think if we were to marry the photograph information to your site plan, and then you had some documentation, I think that would further support.
Identify the proposed new location, one of the signs, or.
That's correct, yeah.
So show the existing signs and the proposed signs on the drawing.
I think the whole point is to try to understand the significance of impact on parking. And so the hope is through your documentation that it's offsetting that concern and then it's in line with the guidelines. So if that's helpful.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Awesome. Anything else, team, to comments or thoughts or? Okay. Perfect. Does that give you what you needed for today's conversation to help you?
I think so.
Okay.
I may or may not be submitting it next week, I don't know.
If you need additional time to take leadership.
I know.
Well, once you're not conceptual, you won't be at the end of the meeting every time.
Theoretically, you know.
Well, I mean, unless you wait till the last minute, which you'll still be at the end of the meeting.
And we don't have any conceptuals, which is sometimes a thing, but more than likely you'll be able to sooner.
So some of these things, the contractor would be adjusting his drawings and. Yeah, I think I might be able to get it together. See.
Okay. Very helpful.
Okay,
Thank you, sir.
thank you very much.
Patience for these long meetings.
That's very helpful. It's no problem.
Appreciate it. Thank
You
you.
guys are dedicated.
These have been some long ones, for sure. Just bad timing for you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Last application in order is number 1013 Hunter Avenue.
Who might that be?
Well, I'm hoping I didn't forget to put somebody on. So this application is to construct a 19-foot 9-inch by 20-foot 9-inch addition on the east elevation with the overall height of 24 feet, 7.5 inches, and constructed a 4-car garage with a little space above. The new garage would measure approximately 45 feet by 45 feet. Materials for the project would include black board and batten smooth grade and heavy siding. The ideal door is 16 feet by 18 feet garage door. The 216-inch by 96-inch opening, double tempered glass black aluminum folding patio door. The neon light up down wall lights, gooseneck lights, the crest line aluminum clad windows with a plain interior. Math staff internal line steel full light door, and constructing a brown bluestone thermal patio with an Ingram tile hot tub. Install an nano wall on the back of the original house, although it's been slightly altered for this application. So it's still on the back, it's just done in an addition on the back. Now, the proposed the proposed design has changed from last month, with the addition being moved back to be in line with the facade of the house, a lower height and different roof. HPO would still encourage an addition more towards the rear of the house. HPO staff does not find the updated design fits with the existing context of the alley. And it still appears larger than the house, and that's specifically for the carriage house. The commission needs to discuss if the following is appropriate: the addition on the front side of the house, the rear addition with the nano wall, and the size and scale of the carriage house. Staff would recommend that materials such as roofing and windows come from the approved lists. And staff recommendation is that commissioners should offer design feedback that can be utilized by the applicant to further refine the proposal for review at a future meeting. Again, this is conceptual, so no action taken. Basis for staff recommendation is City Code 3116.11, these standards for alteration, as well as City Code 3116.12, these standards for new construction, and the Victorian Village guidelines on new construction.
Thank you, Kimberly. Can you state your names, get you sworn in?
Hi, Lois Miller.
Eric Shao.
Do you both agree to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you again for being patient. So, all right, so I think a lot of us were here last time. So if maybe,
I wasn't.
yes, ma'am. Yes,
No.
that's correct. That's correct.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, definitely. But if there's an opportunity to kind of talk about like the things that you want feedback on too as well, given what staff, and then how can we kind of help? That'd be helpful to make sure that we're responding in the right way too as well.
Well, thank you. You referenced it and thank you. But the site plan doesn't, I just realized the site plan does not show the back rear of the main house was bumped out a few feet where the nano wall is. It wasn't reflected as an addition on the site plan, but you referenced it. Most houses in Victorian Village have, as you know, thin lots, and almost all of them fill up the width. And if it's an over 40-foot lot, you typically, which is the larger homes, they fill up the lot. So you don't see a lot of side yards. And most houses kind of want to have a backyard and have some privacy in the back and live in the back. So that's kind of why we did that. Because if we would move it back to maintain that little porch, which is so tiny that you can't even put a chair on it, you truly only can smoke a cigarette on that, standing up. But if we did that and moved it back, we would lose the two gorgeous dining room windows, which are low, big, and beautiful. And so like going back and forth, it's like, I feel like for me, it's more valuable. I am part owner with my son, to have the windows in the dining room to let in glorious light and be beautiful, instead of the porch that is so small that it's not even really functional for any purpose today. So that was kind of our thinking in doing that. And we did hear you and make that smaller. It is set back from the main house. So it's not flush, it's just a little bit back. So we pushed it 7 feet back. And then we did put a few feet out in the back, where that nano wall is. So we tried to see if we can accommodate, we're just trying to meet in the middle and see what you guys want, and if we can, make something work.
Would you be able to talk about a little bit of any changes or any amendments that you made to the carriage house at all?
Yeah, so we took that down in size quite a bit. It's actually within a handful of feet. Aerial, it's the same size as the house. It is much smaller in scale and density. And we actually took our inspiration from, this is towards the end of that packet. I'm happy to pass this around if you want to see it. 750 Hunter is kind of what we patterned it. There you go. It's much better than mine. We patterned visually it after that because we thought it was driving around, probably one of the more handsome ones. And that actually is takes up more of the lot on that particular property than it does on our plans. And then the Lundy one, you can see it goes way up in scale to 3 stories. So that's kind of where our inspiration came from, and we did make it smaller. The square footage actually does not include the balcony. It's actually a little less than what's stated because the balcony wouldn't count, an appraiser wouldn't count the balcony as living space or square footage for the property. So the actual box is smaller than what was stated. But want to hear what you guys think. We want to work with what your desires are and reach some kind of middle so we can we want to make an attractive product. My son wants to live there and we think it's that was the original Hunter House. I don't know if you guys knew that or not, where they used to hold the Victorian Village meetings there.
Oh, neat.
I know. And that's what they called it, was the Hunter House. So it's, when you walk in, you really feel, oh, wow, this was kind of a special house, so.
I think also on the statement is our fits with the existing context of the alley.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you've actually been down that alley or looked on Google Earth. I mean, right next door is just enormous
4 stories, actually.
with, front loading garages but that's actually gonna tower over our carriage house. And the property to the north also has a smaller cottage style
2-story.
second house sitting on the lawn, which doesn't look that great. But then when you go, across the alley, you're looking at garages that kind of belong in the hilltop that aren't indicative to Victorian Village whatsoever. I mean, they're absolutely hideous. So, I mean, we feel like our carriage house garage would actually look really nice. And, we're keeping the 4 cars for parking to eliminate a lot of the on-street parking as opposed to a carriage house with, only a 2-car garage.
And then, so the one that has the 4-story building, it's on the corner of 2nd and Rita Alley. In case you've driven by there. And then the house to the north is just a 2-story cottage, but it literally sits almost on the alley, like right at the back of their lot. It's not technically, it doesn't have much, it's not on Hunter per se. It's situated more towards the back there. You can probably see it in the trees there. Here you go. Yeah. And then we took for, I think you have the slide there that says towards the end, it's the second to the last slide. It says other homes with a 1.5 lot size. We took these as kind of, it's the second to last slide. I'm sorry. If you can't find it, I can pass my picture.
So
There, you got it. There you go. They both have 1.5 size lots, same as ours. And that's what was utilized with their lots. So we kind of looked at that thinking, well, those got approved. So that's kind of where we thought on the one on West 2nd, we thought, well, we can do something that matches a little bit better than those two, like to do two almost identical facades so that the windows are exactly the same on both, just to kind of make it look very uniform. And whereas like the gutters coming off of that in the middle and they're different products, the roof lines are different and odd. And then the one on the right on Warren Street, it's extremely modern. It's architecturally from the street. I think ours is much more uniform architecturally. We didn't choose brick because I felt like there's no way we could match it. And it's beautiful brick, so.
But we also have kind of the conceptual of what it'll actually.
Yeah, so if you go to the next slide, yeah, there. So the black board and batten there on the left was kind of the conceptual idea we had just because we knew we couldn't match the brick well enough to make it look good. And so if we did the board and batten, it would be, we thought handsome like that. I think it's handsome.
Awesome. Perfect.
So what's your thoughts and what would you like to
No worries.
us to,
No worries.
basically?
That's helpful, very helpful.
Thank you.
So maybe I got a couple points. I'm thinking about like breaking it down to like maybe just general scale, right? Just scale and position of the addition on the home. Maybe thinking about scale as it relates to the carriage house relative to the home. We can just kind of stay high level at massing and then maybe start to get into materiality at the latter part, if that's okay. But so if maybe at the home in terms of the positioning of the addition as it relates to the existing home.
I was curious what the dimension of the setback is from the original house and the addition. There's a fairly small dimension
Yeah, I
of what
think
it would
it's
be.
it's less than a foot.
Okay.
We took off so much, and made what that room is so much smaller, and then we added on some in the back to try to compensate. We just didn't really want to lose the windows in the dining room because they're gorgeous and you could see them there. And same thing with kind of the rear of the home. Our thinking was, you know, back in the day, I mean, there was only one window in the whole back of the home, but of course utilities back then, I'm sure were a fire. I don't know. And people probably didn't want a lot of windows, and now people really want a lot of windows, and utilities aren't an issue anymore, which is why we wanted to brighten the indoors up by adding a lot of light. Because like I said, there's only one window there now on the whole back.
So any additional thoughts, just reactions in terms of to the repositioning of the program? As it relates?
The roof levels are kind of aligned now. I'm remembering maybe last time the addition was a bit higher.
Yeah, one was flat too.
Yeah.
And then we tried to make the roofs identical and pretty.
From a construction standpoint, how, is there any thought yet as to, you've got existing construction, you've got new stuff butting into one another? How much of the original roof profile at that side of the house can be maintained? Looks like none. And what does the interface look like between new and existing? You know, roof
Well,
levels?
actually, a lot of that, because it is two completely separate roof systems, so that's more of an actual. That's more of like an actual roofer type question, but it actually will maintain 90% of the original roof, and the way that they're gonna do the valley. Like I said, that's actually more of a roofer / engineer architectural question. But I mean, we should actually be able to maintain quite a bit of that.
Yeah, and so
Does
they're
that
gonna
mean
have
it's
to
gonna
put,
turn the
since there's a
corner
valley,
somehow?
yeah,
Yeah.
they're gonna have to build a hump. I'm sure there's a word for it that I'm not familiar with, just to direct the water away because, you know, you got a valley there.
Sure, critter.
Well, if we keep with the box gutter type thing. Or were we doing round on, or the box?
I think you're doing around. I thought I saw
Some
that.
new, I don't think we're doing box on the new one, probably just regular.
Nobody.
I think some of the massings seem to imply a kind of a box gutter that's matching the existing, you know, roof.
Kind of does look like it.
Yeah, roof edge. So it might just be worth thinking about that as things are further refined.
Okay.
To say, actually, maybe it makes more sense for the addition to be slightly lower if we're gonna have these two things maybe not tie in together in such a tight alignment. Just might be tough to get it all working. And I think it also then would speak to the secondary nature of the addition as opposed to the, you know, the existing house still being the primary focus.
So do you want the roof? So right now the pitch is lower on the addition. Do you want the gutter line lower also?
I think it's a question for your team to think about.
Well, keeping the.
Because I think it does have a design impact one way or another. So I would consult your team and just try to figure it out in more detail for the next time.
That's
Do an iteration
I
of
think
this.
if you could figure out how to do it, I don't know what it looks like, but then, and I think you're the one to speak to this.
No.
If you can keep that original roof line and the box gutters from the original house all intact and get the addition below it and do whatever you're doing and leave that all as it was, it's gonna look a lot better and I think you're gonna be happier with it. I think we're gonna be a lot happier with it. So, and it gives you a lot more freedom to do whatever you're doing by not touching it. And if you were to do this roof interaction thing, I'm telling you, you're gonna have nothing but trouble with keeping that thing from leaking and making it go work long term. Would be my guess. I'm not a roofer, but they tend to, when you tend to try to get that hodgepodge working long term, it tends to never want to work right. So
I just think just from a standpoint of being able to try to emphasize the secondary nature of the addition, I think that's what the team is kind of responding to, and that may be a trick to really try to help balance out the more forward position of the addition and still being able to maintain that secondary presence.
Okay.
As we continue, is kind of thinking about like this view, but even the side elevation is kind of critical to being able to understand how things start to return and die into the existing. And so 7 inches is maybe tough. I'm not certain. It feels like it's still too forward to me. Like it would be interesting to understand. I know that you guys are thinking about square footage and program and interior kind of components, and I totally get it. It's just like, where is that balance of that you're trying to do too much program on the site? And we've had those projects in front of us, but I think the piece to try to work through this is that how does that additional square footage in addition still have that subservient kind of secondary aspect to it?
Yeah.
As you kind of continue.
Hear what you're saying. May I respond?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
I'm just wondering if we would have a rendering of the original brick on the right and then the addition being the board and batten. The glory is gonna be the brick one and the black board and batten is gonna be recessed physically, but also I would think visually as well, because it's black board and batten versus this glorious old handmade brick that you can't even get anymore.
Makes sense. And that's totally fair. That's totally fair.
Maybe I can get a rendering or something.
Yeah. And I don't want to necessarily mislead you that a rendering is going to solve those things, because, like, just say for instance, I think that the team is talking about, I should say for instance, the overhang on the addition, right? So is the overhang itself going to die into the side of the existing home? Or is that overhang going to have to turn the corner and return back? Or just the interaction of those elements as
So
you
you want to see
continue?
more renderings?
No renderings. But I'm just saying, just kind of think about that. I think to Kevin's point is, how do you, as you work through the roof kind of conditions, what is the right step back and position of the new addition to try to help magnify the secondary nature of the addition from the home?
Because right now it looks like a townhouse. It looks like 2 houses joined together. And I realize that's a lot of, because we're just looking at white.
Yeah.
It's not the color, but.
Yeah, well, we looked at the West Second one and
Yeah.
felt like, well, it's prettier than West Second.
Well,
I was
Sorry, West Second.
I was just going to point to that.
That's my house. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, sorry.
I was gonna use that as a comparison, that slide, which the West Second and West and Warren, because, you kind of pointed at Warren and said, oh, who would want that? And it's like, well, actually, that is an example of a good way to do it, even though I wouldn't want it for my house, but it is the way that the way it should be done, whereas that very modern addition hides back there, right? It's like the house stands on its own. That is its own thing. This other thing is back there. You barely pay attention to it, and the historic home stands on its own. The West Second Avenue. I don't know if we approve that, and I mean, they tried, Lord.
It's got some history.
It looks like it.
I mean, they did some of the things we would recommend, which is, don't make it look like the other one, and like, it's just not well executed, right? But it does what we're saying is the risk here, which is, oh well, they made it a different thing, right? It's board and batten, and well, they did a gable instead of making it a hip, so the roof line doesn't match up, and it's set back a little, right? This is the risk that you take, is that this is what it might turn out looking like, is that it would look like West Second, right? And so if you don't push it all the way back and make it different enough, that it just looks a little not quite right.
Yeah, I think something in the middle between Warren and what you're,
That's
what you have
exactly
right now.
That's exactly right.
Not as far back as that, but something kind of in the middle.
And I did want to say this, we didn't start out this way since I didn't say anything, but I did want to say, I appreciate that you guys clearly listened to some of the feedback we gave from the first round in terms of not blocking all the windows and some of that. So you're clearly taking some of the feedback, and I know we haven't gotten to the garage, or the carriage house yet, but I did want to put that note out there, so.
Okay, so may I ask, if we move that back, do you have anything in your mind about how much further back? Because if I do, and I lose my wishes, which I love, they're gorgeous. And they're on either side of the fireplace, so they're, you know the room, you guys have all seen it.
You could always play around with some placements and present a couple options to the commission as well. It would probably be another conceptual review, but it would allow you to look at like, hey, how far do I move this back? What does it look like for the rest of the house? As well as it could also let the commission go, okay, we think these ones fit within code guidelines, these could work, this maybe doesn't work.
Okay.
So it encourages a little bit more discussion too.
I think what we recommended last time, and I would still try to recommend again, and I don't know what the layout is inside this house, but all the houses in this neighborhood, they push back, right? And if you can figure out how to make the layout of this house work in a narrow.
Yeah. The reason we didn't is because we have 1.5 lots at size and we have all this side usage. And if we go back, then the backyard becomes a side yard, which is awkward. It's not private. It also doesn't match the rest of the neighborhood because almost every house in Vic Village is almost to the edges of the lots. And so then we're not even gonna look in line with everybody else. And then we got an awkward backyard on the side yard, kind of like you see in suburbs. That was kind of where we were thinking.
And maybe there's a way that you push it out the back and then out. Right?
Oh, I see, you're just putting the whole second thing.
Right, so leave the front house there, but once you get to the back, then let that bump out happen, right? And let it get wide.
Have to play with it. It was those damn dining room windows.
Yeah, I would think it has to go back pretty significantly, and I see what you mean by losing space. You can't just shift it back because you got windows on the old house.
Yeah, that's what we really want to keep.
Yeah.
Right, well, that's what I'm saying, leave all of that as
Yeah.
is, but like, basically, once
But
you're
we can't-
from
Start at the
here,
start at the
then
back edge of the house.
come back out, right?
I'm sorry, say that again.
So from this point out, that's where you extend and come back, come out from there. Right, so
Yeah, but I'm robbing my backyard.
Yes.
And I'm not utilizing.
Yes.
The
Yeah.
side yard, and everybody gets
Yeah.
to use their side yard in Victorian Village. Like, there's no empty side yards in Vic Village.
Yeah.
Unless.
yeah, I mean, it's always it's a.
So we kind of want to fit visually on the street and make us look like everybody else in Victorian Village. And we have this extra width, so why can't we use it?
Would it be beneficial to, I know that right now you guys' drawings are really just your site, right? Your parcel. So what could happen, what may be beneficial is if you start to think about the context a little bit, right? So if you were to draw a little bit more, so how does the existing buildings that are to your right and to your left and to your rear, the scale of those and where they're positioned on the site, that may help us to try to understand contextually kind of some of the challenges that you're talking about, and that could help inform some dialogue too as well. Just expanding your site plan a little bit, and then I think as we start to talk about the carriage house and scale, I think those elements and context of the scale of the other things, you don't have to have a lot of detail on other things, but just being able to integrate those into the drawings may be helpful.
Yeah, I was just going my train of
Oh,
thought.
I'm sorry.
Which is, seeing an elevation of the building that has the garage down low to one side of your design, and then seeing the small cottage to the other side of the design, realizing there's going to be an in-between point probably where your building hits, I think will help us a lot. Understand the scale and understand that there is some path for compatibility between things on the site.
That's good.
But I would recommend it your site plan also.
Awesome. Anything else on the addition? Okay.
Well, I have a question. The, looks like a deck of sorts is proposed in the back that's up off the ground, the brown element on the screen here where the hot tub is sitting, recessed into, that is a raised deck, as I understand it. Is that correct? Or are we talking a raised patio or
Well,
some
that's
other
the raised
construction?
brownstone, because
Yeah, it's like bluestone.
Set in.
So
It's
it'll,
more of a
Yeah.
patio.
it's a patio, but
Yeah, like
raised
bluestone.
above the backyard grade.
Well, I can get data to see how high it was raised. Typically, they don't really raise bluestone higher than the earth because it's
Right.
so heavy, and then you have to
I
build
think
up the
that,
earth
I
to
think
do
that
it.
might just be the like,
I think that's
the
it.
visual conception for the picture. I don't believe it's actually raised. off the
Okay.
ground.
I think we see mostly properties that have a patio in the backyard.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is a bluestone patio, not a deck, and
Okay.
I don't think it's raised. I think that's just
Yeah.
a
Okay.
misnomer.
And then, since it's flush with grade, I'll ask about the hot tub. Is that sunken down?
Yes.
Like a in-ground pool sort of
Yes.
patio? Okay, and the, just a question for your team maybe is how that relates to the existing foundation of the house and the way those two interact, and is there some concern from our end about a historic structure being compromised by a recessed hot tub if there's not evidence that a structural engineer maybe has thought of it, or what, where footings are in relation to each other, is the foundation of the house gonna be compromised by this by this recessed element? That's very heavy and has lots of water and, that sort of stuff.
Made a note.
That's about it. You're probably.
Yeah, you're-
A few loose rocks.
You're right.
Yeah, so
Pretty close.
it's a question for your team, probably to.
Actually, under has a really good, like it has the old brick bordered in, and then somebody had already went deeper in
Merged
the
it.
basement. And so it has a really, really, really solid foundation. Amazing.
Okay.
That's a rarity.
Yeah.
In the neighborhood.
That's what, on the inside anyway.
I think it's one of the nicer basements I've been in, actually, in the village, honestly.
Want to switch to the carriage house? Sorry. All right. Any thoughts on the carriage house? I think massing and general size, just.
I'm having a little PTSD because when I lived on Star, our neighbors built a big carriage house to rent out. And it just like looked into our backyard. But we had a narrower, typical Victorian village yard. So it was, their lot line was right on our lot line. So you might have a little more room, might not be that big of a deal. But it is going to look very big to your neighbors. There's no doubt about that.
Well, I didn't think it was gonna look as big compared to the corner of Second and Riga, which is 4
That's the
stories.
condos, right? That condos?
Right? They look like.
Yeah, it's like a 4-unit
Yeah,
monstrosity thing. All the backs are, I believe the back. There's different designs on each unit in the backyard type of it. If I
Yeah.
recall when I was there last, it's kind of the front is all like the same facade, but then when you go to the back, it's like.
yeah, you can probably go down and see it.
Yeah, keep going
Yeah,
straight.
that was it right there.
Yeah, those are.
So we'll be lower than him, and the next door is a 2-story anyway. The house that's to the north of this lot, but it actually sits right on Riga Alley.
Oh,
Closer
the
to
house
Riga.
does? Oh, yeah, there.
House to the north, yeah, that house right there. It sits way closer to Riga than it does to Hunter.
Gotcha, yeah.
See, yeah, you can see there. So that's why we didn't think it would be bad at all, and you can see the other little garages kind of look awful.
Yeah, that one's seen some better days.
Yeah, maybe
Oh,
just
sorry.
like including some photographs next time too as well. I think that'll help us. Just like photographs and just expanding out just a little bit. Just some of that context I think would be very helpful.
So helpful. So assuming that we keep the massing stays, which that's kind of a big assumption, but let's just say that for the moment. The one thing that kind of strikes me that I think that makes it tough to handle the massing is kind of kind of I'll say the fenestration is the way I describe it is if you compare to some of the examples you used as that you have in the slide decks there, the taller you go, the more random the windows kind of get in the older buildings, right? And the more kind of steep that they get. Like if you use the Lundy ones that are the stables, you know, the windows get smaller and kind of more offset. Whereas the design you have is like, you know, it's very symmetrical as you go up, and that's that sort of thing. So just kind of keep that in mind. I think if you look at the newer one that's on Lundy Street, you can see they've got it's a good example of big garage door, bigger windows, smaller window, small window, right? It's an example of kind of how that should flow if you're gonna kind of try to keep that big mass, as opposed to same size window going up. So just, you know, kind of keep that in mind.
There's not really that many windows in your images on this building.
Well, that's also true. I'm just looking at the one where it's the double
Right.
garage door, and then it's like same size windows, and then one with the half round.
So would you like to see the first row of windows be a little larger? Because I sure hate to make any windows.
I mean, I'm not prescribing a solution per se. You know, maybe that's probably what it would end up looking like, because like you said, you probably don't want to make them even smaller on the third floor.
Yeah, it's like they had to, because they had to stick a little window in your
Right.
100 years ago.
Like I said, just, you know, use those ones as those other examples as inspiration. But yeah, like, you know, it's also weird that there's no windows
On the right.
on the right.
I think that would kind of break up the mass of it too, having
Right.
those windows. It just looked like and I realize again, that's partially because we're just looking at white.
And I'm not sure if it should be a peak or whether it should be a cut peak. You know, those tend to be more in the village.
We did now we'll do whatever, I mean.
Yeah.
But the top was cut because we were trying to match.
Right, because some of them are.
Because the house is currently,
Oh,
the front house.
The front house.
The original Hunter house
Okay.
has the roof line flat
Sure.
from the top.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, so we were trying to match it.
So again, not trying to give answers.
And then also the Hunter Ave one
Yeah.
has a flat little. There you go. So that's what we were trying to do. But we're not married to that at all. We were just trying to do what looked good, and so we're open.
Anything relatable to the second floor, I'm gonna say balcony kind of condition of the carriage?
Yeah, I don't know how to describe it. I mean, maybe you're the best one to start, but I don't know how to put it into words.
Yeah, I just think it's contributing to the scale. Like, I think that there's a concern with the scale of the carriage house being too big. And then I think the balcony itself is adding to that. And so, I think it's maybe a feature that may not be helping the cause. So it may be something to explore, removing the balcony kind of component and understanding the scale of.
We just wanted to give them some outside space.
I understand completely. I get it. From a program perspective, it's like, you know, what the constraint of the site is the constraint, right? So how do you solve, you know, balancing all of these components, right? So, but it seems as though what you're trying to do with the positioning of the addition is trying to preserve the backyard, but then with the balcony condition, you're adding backyard. So it's like, you know, if you're preserving the backyard, how do we get those people, you know, down to the backyard to use the backyard? And then how do we balance the overall scale of the added program to the site? So it's a balancing act across all the components. And I think that's why Kevin keeps saying, well, no, that's something for your team to solve. I think we're just reacting, but your team is going to push and pull on these elements.
And I think the way it's the balcony is illustrated doesn't do it any favors either.
Right.
I mean, it's almost like a masonry pier or a cast in place concrete column with this fully opaque railing.
I was wondering if like an iron railing would kind of open it up a little
Yeah,
bit.
the
Maybe.
railing is iron, actually.
Really,
That's
yeah,
not-
will probably be
Oh, okay, so this is just kind of a basic.
iron with cable rail, and I think it called out. Not
Oh,
only
it
this
did
one,
mention
but the previous plan for the last meeting, it actually said the material for that. I don't know.
It's in there somewhere. I did see that.
Carriage
now.
house railing to be black 4x4 steel post with horizontal galvanized.
Well, that's the upper deck, but as far as the columns that hold up the,
Gotcha. So is
it's on the
there,
last one, it's not on this one.
are all the interior, are all the stairways?
There's no
in this
historical.
carriage house building, interior, that you're going from the garage directly up to the dwelling unit? Is
Yes, and that's
how we
part of
understand
the,
it?
like, cause I could understand the concern about having that deck on there, but then I feel like if we take that away, I mean, the garage is on the lower level, so then they have like nowhere to go
To enjoy sunshine.
from right out the house. It's like, where do you go? You know what I mean?
Sure. It might be helpful even just to show a floor plan for us to understand how this building's functioning.
Oh, sure.
Is it intended for a single tenant, right? I mean, there's 4-car garages. I assume some of those spaces are for the main house.
Yeah.
How are folks getting from their garage space through the yard? Probably a different set of doors. Is there a dividing wall down the middle? I think it might just help answer more, provide more design specifics and more things to, illustrate, and maybe there's a logic then that starts to get back to the main house about where the doorways are and things lining up a little bit better. Just once you think about the functionality and logistics of day-to-day operations and things.
Makes sense.
And tying that, it is a very urban environment, right? Like, how do you making sure you're tying that ground level to that second level a little bit more, that it's not necessarily as car centric, perhaps,
Yeah, it'd be great if there's an understanding of, for the folks who are living in the second level of this building, if they want to walk to Neal Avenue, what's the path that they take?
Right.
Because it seems like now they have to go into the alley, which maybe is good enough, but maybe not. Maybe there's another thought about how they can get to the street.
I think another one is just the composite elevation, I think would be helpful, right? So right now,
For sure.
if they were to take this view and give us an elevation view, so right now, every building is being presented. But I think what we're trying to do is trying to figure out contextually, what are the influences that you guys see and it?
Yeah.
And how is that
I
communicated
get
to
that.
us to help the
That would
dialogue?
be really helpful,
So that'd be helpful. Okay.
because we know what they look like, but you're not seeing them. That's
It's okay.
very wise.
This is great. No, this
We'll
is
do
great. This is great. Okay, so we talked about roof, we talked about the carriage house, we talked about the addition, scale, density, anything, materials, maybe materiality. Was there any concerns materiality wise?
We need to flesh out the
Yeah.
drawing on the piers, I hear, is what I'm hearing, and the railway. Right?
I think so. I just think it would make it easier to understand what's going on if we could see
Yes.
some of that.
And I think one thing the guidelines say is that where there's a lot of adjacent construction that features brick, new buildings should also be constructed with brick exteriors. So it might be beneficial to balance how much is just board and batten versus where are there opportunities to maybe
Yeah.
comply with that.
We did, we were gonna, that's why
I
we,
think the first level of the garage, right?
yeah.
Kind of like
just
that, yeah.
Yeah, like the Hunter is we were trying to copy. I mean, we were fine to do it board and batten, but you guys mentioned brick last time, so that's why we
Maybe,
tried to accommodate that.
and the one on ones on Monday is all brick even, you may consider.
Well, the problem is if we do it all brick is I can't match the front and then,
I mean, just the carriage house.
yeah, I know, but then it doesn't match the
Well,
brick
there's
with the front.
compatibility and there's matching. I would maybe push your architect design team to think of what is a good
That's why I kind of
contrasting
tried to
color
incorporate the
that
board
is
and
still
batten,
compatible,
yeah,
right?
Right, cause we'll have brick and board and batten on.
on both.
Yeah, and I think that's how, like, instead of thinking about the buildings separately, is when we start the composite of the drawing. I think trying to understand how both elements inform one another will then help tell your story that you guys are thinking about, right? So as massing wise, as materiality wise, how are those? And then at the same time, how they're influenced. Where are windows as a result of the interior plan, but then where are those windows on the site? And how does that kind of interact? I think, so if we were able to see those things, that would be very helpful.
One thing I'd say with the carriage house, just to keep in mind as you're going through the design, right? And the way I look at it as a commissioner, it's called a carriage house, right? And it's called that for a reason, right? These were barns, these were places to house carriages, right? And so when you're looking at it as an overall design, think about it, if this were 1890 and it had stored carriages, how would this have been designed and how would it have functioned and how would openings have been and how would people access this building, right? And how would people gone in and out and that sort of thing? And it should still have that general feel. It shouldn't feel like it's a garage in Grove City that's designed to look like a building from 1890. Right. I don't know if that helps at all, just kind of put it into some context.
It does. That's why I think we were trying to hear you from the last time, and I think that's why we.
Yeah, no, you got much
came up with
closer.
it because
Absolutely.
I thought that did look carriage housey to me.
Right, but it's also about how you use it. So you guys got much closer on the look, but it's also about just how you interact with the building. And so how do you, like we talked about, how you get, like, in 1890, you didn't have 4 cars that drove into it, right? So, it was pedestrian access and a carriage or two, right? How do you use the structure and how do people come and go from it? And in this neighborhood, you're going to have a lot of pedestrian traffic, and it's not all around cars just driving, coming and going.
Okay.
So,
I think another way of saying the same stuff but differently is that accessory dwelling unit, right, is another term for these, right?
Yeah.
This is an accessory building to the main building because it's the garage for the folks who are living in the main building. How can it still be an accessory as in size and scale, design, quality?
Right, not competing with the house.
Right.
yes.
Oh,
Like, same but different.
Yes.
Thank you.
A lot of those larger carriage houses are sitting on some pretty big lots, right? So there still is some, I'm going to say, access on the side yard from that perspective through the alley and such. And so when you walk out the door, I can take that path towards the right of way and things of that nature. So that's what the team is looking for.
Okay, may I ask, do you want to see, I think this is what I'm hearing, like a walkway from that, not to Riga, but to the front of Hunter, because we certainly could show that.
I thought about that. I didn't want to give you any indication that you had to do that.
Well, I mean, I think that's nice.
I think something, again, back to your team, I think something in the drawings that show what those would look like, what the path from the house to the garage and et cetera would look like.
Yeah,
I think
a full landscape site plan.
Yeah, you should think about how you want whoever lives there, how they would want to live there. Do you want them to have to go out to the alley every time they go anywhere? How should they have to come and go from the place?
Well, everybody's gonna have to go there because that's where the garage access is and that's where they're gonna park.
Right,
But
not everyone's going to be.
off the
But
street.
I think he's saying
Well,
They're walking. That's the point. A lot of people are going to be
Oh,
walking.
maybe from the garage to the house.
yeah,
Well, no,
to wherever.
to wherever, right? They're going to go out to dinner and they're going to walk. They're not going to go take in the car,
Oh.
right? And they don't want to have to go walk down the alley, right? So they may want to take the way that's a little more scenic when they leave. You don't want to walk past the garbage bins every time you leave the house, right? So just kind of keep that how people live in the neighborhood. They don't live by cars in the neighborhood necessarily.
Is there anything else that we can help with tonight to help the application?
It gave us a lot, so I
Yeah,
wrote.
kind of threw a lot at you.
And we tried and we'll come back and.
No, I think
again.
It's a big project. It'll
sure.
take a few
For sure. And then, like, for instance, like, some of the product data and stuff like that, I know that those things keep carrying forward, but just think about it, like, we can build up to that too as well. So don't feel like you have to burden yourself with, all the product data, so much every
Oh,
time.
thank you.
Thinking about it, right now, we're trying to get the form, we're trying to get the massing, we're trying to work through those items, and then we can kind of progressively get to the point where those things kind of fold back in.
Thank you.
So I just thinking about the materiality and how you're, materials of that application. that may help streamline it a little bit for you. Yeah, are you guys agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, very helpful though. Thank you so much for
Thank
being
you.
responsive too as well. So thank you.
Thanks for the patience.
Yes.
Long meeting.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know how you guys do it if you've worked all day. I don't know what time you started.
We just follow us.
Especially you.
7:30.
No.
You're a hero. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, well, we have. seven.
Yeah, we have a few things to do.
You guys are like the school class. I'm like, I want to, we still have things to do, Jen.
Teacher hasn't let us out.
7 and 11.
Yes.
We have to. continue.
Oh, we haven't even continued.
So 7 did let me know that they weren't going to be here. I was hoping, by throwing them kind of a Hail Mary of like, hey,
No worries.
we need somebody here. Hope somebody could get here, but that clearly, did not happen. So for the sake of time, I'm going to suggest continuing it for the due to absence of the applicant. This is an application to remove and replace the rear staircase and to paint, to match the existing stairs. But I think we need the applicant here to answer some additional
Yeah,
questions.
we have a lot of questions, I feel like, on that one.
Is there a motion to continue?
Motion to continue, 58 West Star Ave,
Is there a second?
56 West Star Ave.
Is there a second? Sorry.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Let's continue. Thank you.
All right, and then the other one that did not show up surprisingly was number 12, which is 721 North High Street. This application was to construct a pergola along the north elevation. The pergola would be attached to the wall. I can read this one into the record, or do we just want to continue it to the, okay.
Let's continue again. Is there a motion to continue?
Motion to continue application for 721 North High Street.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Let's continue. Thank you.
Is that 4 now?
Yes.
That's favorite.
So they're gonna replace all those little umbrellas they have or something?
What? Motion to adjourn.
I was gonna say, we can talk about that on the record when they're.
No, that was more off the record.
We're not off. the record.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion to adjourn from Commissioner Sprite.
Is there a second? All those in favor say aye.